Hello everyone, and welcome to the Ben 10 What Ifs. So we are back with an interesting movie on what if Ben 10 was in MHA verse with Omnitrix. But before we start, I just want to remind you to please subscribe to my channel and hit the like button if you enjoy my content. Let's start the story. Chapter 1. Crossing Over. The familiar green flash subsided, leaving Ben Tennyson blinking stars from his vision. One moment he'd been Jetray, soaring through the dimensional portal to pursue Eon, and the next. What the? Ben crouched instinctively, taking in his surroundings. This wasn't Bellwood, not even close. Gleaming skyscrapers stretched skyward in futuristic configurations unlike anything on Earth. His Earth, anyway. Digital billboards flashed advertisements in Japanese. Vehicles with oddly aerodynamic designs zipped along elevated highways, and the people were the strangest part. A woman with butterfly wings fluttered past. ABU. Cynisman with a literal stone head checked his watch. A child bounced 15 feet in the air while his mother, sporting what appeared to be blue gills, called for him to be careful. Dimensional displacement, Ben muttered. Checking the Omnitrix. The familiar green hourglass symbol pulsed steadily, but something felt different, a subtle vibration he'd never experienced before. Not just another planet, something else entirely. His attention snapped toward a distant explosion. Smoke billowed between buildings 3 blocks away, followed by screams. Instinct took over as Ben broke into a sprint, weaving through startled pedestrians. Look at his clothes. Another foreign tourist. Is that some kind of support item on his wrist? Ben ignored the comments, focused on the chaos ahead. As he rounded the corner, he witnessed what could only be described as a superpowered battle in progress. A hulking figure with skin like molten rock hurled flaming debris at fleeing civilians while cackling maniacally. No heroes yet, someone cried nearby. Ben didn't hesitate. He slapped the Omnitrix, feeling the familiar surge of alien DNA rewriting his cellular structure. The transformation completed in a flash of emerald light, replacing the teenager with a crystalline humanoid. Diamond Head. Ben's voice resonated with characteristic depth as he launched himself between the villain and a cowering family. A barrage of flaming asphalt bounced harmlessly off his crystalline body. What the? Another pro. Don't recognize this one, the villain growled, his body temperature visibly increasing as veins of magma pulsed beneath his obsidian skin. Don't need to recognize me to know you're outmatched, Diamond Head countered, extending his arm as crystalline shards erupted toward the villain, forcing him backward. Civilians, clear the area, the molten villain roared, slamming his fists into the ground. The pavement liquefied instantly, sending a wave of superheated asphalt toward Ben. Diamond Head responded by driving his hands into the street, creating a crystalline barrier that split the molten flow. Who licensed you, Crystal Boy? Never seen your quirk before. The villain launched himself forward, swinging a magma-veined fist. Ben sidestepped with practiced efficiency, morphing his right arm into a prismatic blade that caught the light. Don't know what a quirk is, buddy. But I've been handling hotshots like you since I was 10. With perfect timing, Diamond Head landed a crystalline uppercut that sent the villain staggering. Not giving him recovery time, Ben eated a series of crystal pillars that erupted from the ground in rapid succession, each impact driving his opponent further back. He's amazing. Which agency is he with? That crystal quirk is so versatile. The crowd's commentary registered distantly as Ben maintained focus. The villain's temperature was increasing dangerously. Ben recognized the signs of an impending explosion from similar fire-based enemies he'd fought. Everyone back, he commanded, voice carrying with natural authority. He's going thermal. Ben drove both hands into the ground, channeling Diamond Head's powers to their limit. A complete crystalline dome formed over the villain just as the explosion came. The structure contained the blast, though hairline fractures appeared across its surface. The dome shattered outward in controlled fragments as Diamond Head manipulated his created minerals. The villain lay unconscious at the center, his powers temporarily exhausted. That's how it's done, Ben said, dusting crystal fragments from his shoulders. He turned to check on civilians when the distinct wail of sirens approached. Several vehicles screeched to a halt. Police cars, but unlike any Ben had seen before. Officers emerged with weapons drawn, but they weren't alone. 3 individuals in distinctive costumes accompanied them. Stand down and identify yourself, called a man whose arms had transformed into what appeared to be wood. Ben raised his hands. Easy there. Just took down the bad guy for you. Unauthorized quirk use is illegal regardless of intention, stated a woman with an Eagle K helmet covering the upper half of her face. Identify yourself and present your provisional license immediately. License. Diamondhead's crystalline brow furrowed. Look, where I come from, we don't need licenses to save people from getting barbecued. The third costumed figure, a muscular man in a blue and white outfit, stepped forward cautiously. Foreign national, your Japanese is excellent for a tourist. What agency are you affiliated with? Before Ben could answer, the Omnitrix symbol on his chest began flashing red. Ah, timing as perfect as ever, he muttered. A crimson flash momentarily blinded the officers and costumed figures. When it faded, a teenage boy stood where the crystalline hero had been. He's just a kid. Transformation quirk, some kind of support item on his wrist. Ben Tennyson brushed back his brown hair, green jacket slightly singed from proximity to the fire villain. So, this is awkward. The wooden-armed man advanced. Young man, you're in serious violation of quirk regulation laws. You'll need to come with us for questioning. Can I at least get a thanks for stopping the walking volcano first? Ben replied, tension masking itself ND humor, a defense mechanism developed through years of universe-saving stress. The eagle-helmeted woman's stern expression didn't waver. Japan takes quirk regulations seriously. Vigilantism isn't the answer. I get it, Ben finished. Having heard similar lectures from various authority figures across multiple dimensions. Look, I'm a bit lost. Dimensional displacement. I'm not from your Earth. And I'm still figuring out how things work here. Skepticism radiated from the officers, but the blue-costumed hero studied Ben more intently. That device on your wrist. It's responsible for your transformation. Ben instinctively covered the Omnitrix with his other hand. It's called the Omnitrix. And yes, but it's not what you'd call local technology. A murmur ran through the gathered crowd. Someone was recording with a phone. Great, Ben thought. Multidimensional social media exposure was exactly what he needed right now. The blue-costumed hero made a decision. I'm taking him to UA for evaluation. Principal Nezu will want to assess this situation. Gang Orca, you can't just. The wooden hero began. I'll take full responsibility, Kamui Woods. The hero, apparently named Ang Orca, fixed Ben with an unreadable gaze. If what he says about dimensional displacement is true, this falls under unusual circumstances protocols. Ben weighed his options. He could transform again once the Omnitrix recharged, but alienating the authorities within hours of arrival wouldn't help his situation. Better to play along and gather information. Lead the way, Shamu, Ben said with a smirk that earned him a disapproving grunt from Gang Orca. UA High School was unlike any educational institution Ben had ever seen. The massive H-shaped building loomed impressively against the afternoon sky, its glass and steel architecture somehow conveying both futuristic design and institutional authority. As Gang Orca escorted him through security gates that could have contained a hybrid invasion, Ben whistled appreciatively. And I thought the Plumbers Academy had tight security. Gang Orca didn't respond to the comment, instead guiding Ben through corridors where students in matching uniforms stopped to stare at the American teenager being escorted by the pro-hero. Ben caught fragments of excited whispers. Who's that with Gang Orca? Foreign exchange student. Did you see the green light during that villain attack downtown? My brother sent me footage. Their destination was an office where several adults waited. Ben immediately assessed them as authority figures. Their postures and alert expressions reminded him of the Plumbers, commanding officers. A slender, exhausted-looking man with long black hair regarded Ben with bloodshot eyes. Beside him stood a diminutive person. Ben couldn't immediately tell. With a face resembling a cartoon mouse or bear and wearing an impeccable suit, this small figure radiated surprising authority. Thank you for bringing him, Gang Orca. The mouse-bear person spoke in a disarmingly cheerful voice. I am Principal Nezu, head of UA High School. This is Aizawa-sensei, one of our faculty members. Ben bowed slightly, recognizing the Japanese custom from his limited interactions with international plumbers. Ben Tennyson. Thanks for not throwing me straight into a cell. That remains an option, the dark-haired man, Aizawa, stated flatly. Nezu chuckled. Please, take a seat, Tennyson-san. Gang Orca has briefed us on your unusual circumstances. Dimensional displacement, you claimed. Ben sat, resisting the urge to fidget under their scrutiny. Yeah, I was pursuing a chrono-sapine, a time-manipulating alien, through a dimensional rift when something went wrong. Next thing I knew, I was here in your city. And this device. Aizawa nodded toward the Omnitrix. The Omnitrix. It contains the DNA of numerous alien species and allows me to transform into them. I've been using it to protect Earth, my Earth, for years. Fascinating. Nezu leaned forward, intelligent eyes studying the device with undisguised curiosity. And in your dimension, there are no regulations on the use of such powers. Ben rubbed the back of his neck. There's the plumbers, intergalactic peacekeepers. I work with them. But no, we don't need licenses to save people from immediate danger. Our society functions differently, Aizawa explained, his tone suggesting he'd given similar lectures countless times. Quirks, superpowers, emerged in humanity about 2 centuries ago. To prevent chaos, strict regulations were established. Heroes require proper training, certification, and licensing. Which brings us to your situation, Nezu continued. While your intentions appeared noble, unauthorized quirk use, or in your case, alien transformation, is strictly prohibited. Ben leaned forward. So if I'd just stood there watching people get crispy, that would have been legal. Aizawa's expression remained unchanged. You could have called for help or assisted with evacuation without using powers. There are protocols. We're not unreasonable, however, Nezu interjected with a placating gesture. Your circumstances are unprecedented. Until we can determine how to return you to your dimension, we need to establish parameters for your presence here. Ben felt a familiar weight settling on his shoulders. The burden of adaptation he'd carried across countless worlds and timelines. What kind of parameters? Nezu and Aizawa exchanged glances. UA High School trains the next generation of professional heroes, Nezu explained. Given your experience and abilities, I propose a temporary placement within our program. Under supervision, you would learn our society's hero protocols while we study your situation. School. Ben couldn't keep the teenage dismay from his voice. I was kind of hoping for a quick dimensional fix and a ticket home. Dimensional travel isn't exactly commonplace here, Aizawa said dryly. Even among quirks, such abilities are vanishingly rare. But we have resources, Nezu added. And connections with scientific communities studying theoretical physics. Your best chance at returning home lies with us. Ben considered his options, which were admittedly limited. He was stranded in an unfamiliar dimension with no allies, no resources, and apparently, no legal GHT to use the Omnitrix without supervision. Fine, he conceded, but I have conditions too. I need access to communications technology. There's a slim chance I can contact my dimension. And I need freedom to defend myself if threatened. Reasonable requests, Nezu nodded. We'll arrange temporary accommodation within UA's dormitories. Tomorrow, we'll introduce you to Class 1A for integrated training evaluation. One more thing, Aizawa added, eyes narrowing slightly. The government will assign an observer to monitor your case. Standard procedure for unusual quirk manifestations are, in your case, extra-dimensional visitors. Ben shrugged. Wouldn't be the first time I've had government babysitters. Then it's settled. Nezu extended a paw-like hand. Welcome temporarily to UA High School, Tennyson-san. Ben stared at the ceiling of his assigned dorm room, processing the day's events. The accommodations were comfortable enough, minimalist but functional, with a bed, desk, and private bathroom. Through the window, he could see other dormitory buildings where students presumably lived. He raised the Omnitrix to eye level. Any chance you can patch through to azimuth on this frequency, old friend? The device remained silent, though Ben noted the hourglass symbol pulsed with a slightly different rhythm than usual, almost as if it were adapting to the energy of this dimension. A knock at his door interrupted his thoughts. Come in, he called, sitting up on the edge of the bed. The door slid open to reveal Aizawa, accompanied by a young woman Ben hadn't met before. She appeared to be in her mid-20s, with striking features, dark purple hair pulled into a practical ponytail, amber eyes with an unusual vertical pupil structure, and a business-like pantsuit. That somehow managed to look both professional and combat-ready. "Tennyson, this is Keita Mizuchi," Aizawa introduced flatly. "Your government liaison." The woman stepped forward, evaluating Ben with an intensity that suggested she was cataloging every detail. "Tennyson-san, I've reviewed the preliminary reports of your appearance and intervention. Impressive adaptation to unfamiliar circumstances." Her Japanese was precise and formal, but with an underlying efficiency that reminded Ben of military personnel he'd encountered. "Just doing what comes naturally," Ben replied with a casual shrug, though he maintained eye contact. This Keita struck him as someone who valued directness. "What comes naturally to you violates 17 different regulations in our society," she countered. "Though without hostility, merely stating facts. My assignment is to monitor your activities, evaluate the potential implications of your presence here, and serve as your guide to our world's protocols." "Babysitter with a badge, got it." Ben smiled to soften the words. A flicker of something, amusement, perhaps, crossed her face before vanishing. "If that simplification helps you, so be it. More accurately, I'm your legal shield. My authorization allows you limited operational freedom that would otherwise be denied." Aizawa cleared his throat. "Mizuchi-san will attend tomorrow's training S's. Scion to observe your abilities firsthand. I suggest you rest and prepare. Class 1A won't go easy on you despite your unusual circumstances." After they left, Ben flopped back onto the bed with a sigh. Dimensional displacement, quirk police, government observers, and now high school hero training. Just another Tuesday for Ben Tennyson. Morning arrived with disorienting unfamiliarity. For a moment, Ben struggled to remember where he was until the events of the previous day rushed back. After a quick shower and changing into the UA gym uniform Aizawa had left for him, a blue tracks UIT with surprisingly comfortable fabric, he made his way to the training grounds following a digital map provided on a school tablet. UA's facilities were nothing short of impressive. The training area Aizawa had designated was an enormous domed structure that could have housed several football fields. Inside, artificial environments had been constructed, urban settings, forested areas, even T appeared to be a miniature industrial zone. Designed for practical quirk application, came Keita's voice as she appeared beside him, seemingly materializing from nowhere. Today she wore a fitted, black tactical outfit with what appeared to be specialized equipment strapped to utility belts. Ben managed not to flinch at her sudden appearance. "Do you always sneak up on people?" "Only when I'm evaluating their situational awareness," she replied matter-of-factly. "Yours is above average. Military training. More like survival training by necessity," Ben answered. "Years of aliens trying to kill you sharpens the senses." Before Keita could respond, a group of students entered the facility from the opposite side. About 20 teenagers in matching blue tracksuits approached, led by Aizawa. Their chatter died down as they noticed Ben and Keita. "Gather around," Aizawa called without raising his voice significantly. Somehow, his tired tone carried authority that commanded immediate compliance. The students formed a semicircle, curious eyes fixed on Ben. "This is Ben Tennyson," Aizawa introduced. "A special observation student who will be training with us temporarily. His abilities are unique and unfamiliar to our hero systems. Mizuchi-san from the Quirk Regulation Bureau is here to monitor today's session." A forest of hands shot up immediately. Aizawa sighed. "Yes, Midoriya." A freckled boy with green-tinged black hair lowered his hand. "Is Tennyson-san from overseas? I don't recognize his quirk signature from any international hero database. Further details will be provided as necessary," Aizawa stated, clearly limiting information. "Today's exercise is adaptive response. You'll be working in teams of 3 against Tennyson-san to assess his capabilities while demonstrating your own progress." Murmurs swept through the students. "All of us against one guy. Is he some kind of pro-hero in training? His quirk must be something special." Ben Keita watching the students' reactions with analytical interest. A spiky-haired blonde student with intense red eyes stepped forward aggressively. "You're putting us against someone we know nothing about. What's his quirk? What are his capabilities?" "That's precisely the point, Bakugo," Aizawa replied evenly. "Heroes often face villains with unknown abilities. Adaptability is essential. I'll go first then, Bakugo declared with a predatory grin. Pick my team, and we'll show him what UA's top students can do. Aizawa consulted his tablet. Teams have already been assigned based on complementary skill sets. First group: Midoriya, Ashido, and Tokiyami. The green-haired boy who had asked the first question nodded seriously. A girl with pink skin and horns gave an excited hop, while a somber-looking boy with what appeared to be a bird's head remained stoically calm. Wait, Ben interjected. So I'm fighting multiple opponents with superpowers, who've trained together, while I'm alone in an unfamiliar environment. Is that a problem? Aizawa asked without inflection. Ben's serious expression melted into a confident smile. Nope, just wanted to make sure you're not going easy on me. The pink-skinned girl, Ashido, according to Aizawa, giggled at his response, while several other students exchanged impressed glances at his confidence. Aizawa outlined the exercise pyramid. The student team would attempt to capture Ben or force him to surrender within a 15-minute time limit. Ben's objective was simply to avoid capture. The urban section of the training ground would serve as their arena. As Ben walked toward the starting position, Keita fell into step beside him. Overconfidence? She asked quietly. Experience, Ben corrected. I've been doing this since I was 10. These kids are good. I can tell just by how they carry themselves, but they've never faced anything like me before. Keita's amber eyes studied him with renewed interest. Perhaps not, but don't underestimate them. UA students are the elite of the next generation. Ben reached the designated starting point, a mock city street intersection. Any advice before they come at me with their quirks? Midoriya has tremendous physical power but sometimes holds back to avoid collateral damage. Tokiyami controls a shadow entity that weakens in bright light. Ashido produces and controls a Sid with impressive mobility on her secretions. Ben blinked, surprised by the forthright tactical information. Why tell me this? Keita's expression remained neutral. My assignment is to assess why. Our full capabilities against known variables. Handicapping you with information asymmetry would skew the results. With that, she stepped away to a monitoring position as Aizawa's voice came over Facilities speaker system. Exercise begins in 3, 2, 1. Ben centered himself, reaching for the Omnitrix with practiced ease. The familiar interface activated at his touch, holography. See alien silhouettes appearing in the display. He made his selection quickly, having already formulated an initial strategy. Let's show them something interesting, he murmured as he slammed down the core. Green light engulfed him as the transformation took hold. His body stretched and contorted, skin hardening into a blue exoskeleton with 4 insectoid wings sprouting from his back. His head structured into a compound-eyed form with a long, flexible neck. Stinkfly. Ben's voice had taken on a nasal, insectoid quality that matched his new form. Just in time, a glob of pink acid splashed where he had been standing a moment before. The transformed Ben took to the air on buzzing wings, immediately gaining aerial advantage. He can fly, came Ashido's surprised voice from around the corner. And he's an insect. Transformation quirk with multiple forms. Midoriya's analytical tone carried upward as Ben circled above them. Dark Shadow, intercept, Tokiyami commanded. From bird-headed boy's body emerged what could only be described as a living shadow entity, a semi-solid darkness with glowing yellow eyes that stretched skyward toward Ben. Whoa, shadow monsters. Cool. Stinkfly dodged with an aerial barrel roll, then countered by spraying a stream of foul-smelling adhesive goo from specialized glands. Dark Shadow recoiled as the sticky substance coated its form, temporarily limiting its movements. Tokiyami grimaced, clearly sharing some sensory connection with his quirk manifestation. Ben circled lower, dodging another acid splash from Ashido, who demonstrated impressive aim even against an aerial target. Midoriya, meanwhile, appeared to be observing, eyes tracking Ben's movements with uncanny focus. He's analyzing my flight patterns, Ben realized. Time to change things up. He dove suddenly, wings buzzing at maximum speed, straight toward Midoriya. The green-haired boy dropped into a fighting stance, body crackling with energy and what appeared electricity dancing across his skin. At the last second, Ben veered away, spraying goo in a wide arc that coated the ground around all 3 students. Ashido slipped but quickly recovered by retting acid from her feet that dissolved the adhesive. Tokiyami's dark shadow created a shield between the goo and its user. Midoriya, however, had leapt high into the air, far higher than any normal human could, on a trajectory to intercept Ben. Smarter than they look, Ben commented, impressed despite himself. Midoriya's fist, glowing with energy, nearly connected with Stinkfly's exoskeleton. Ben's years of aerial combat experience allowed him to twist away, feeling the displaced air as the punch passed within inches. That would have hurt, Ben muttered, gaining altitude. He needed another approach. These students were coordinating well, with Ashido controlling ground mobility, Tokiyami providing mid-range coverage, and Midoriya serving as the heavy hitter. Time for a different alien. Ben slapped the Omnitrix symbol on his chest. Another flash of green light, and Stinkfly was replaced by a phantasmal figure with a single eye, ghostly chains, and a spectral tail. Ghost Freak. The students below reacted with surprise to the second transformation. Multiple forms. Is there a limit? How many transformations does he have? Ben turned intangible, drifting invisibly through a building wall. This form always gave him an unsettled feeling, memories of Ghost Freak's consciousness attempting to overpower his own, but it was perfect for evasion. He phased through several structures, putting distance between himself and the students. Through walls, he observed them regrouping, Midoriya apparently formulating strategy while Ashido kept watch and Tokiyami sent Dark Shadow to scout. Interesting quirk applications, Ben thought. The shadow entity can operate independently. As if sensing his presence, Dark Shadow suddenly turned toward the wall Ben was hiding behind. Its yellow eyes narrowed. He's here. The shadow creature called in a distorted voice. It can sense me. Ben was genuinely surprised. Few beings could detect Ghost Freak while intangible. No Ime to analyze. Dark Shadow lunged through the wall, its claws passing through Ben's intangible form but somehow creating a cold, uncomfortable sensation unlike anything he'd experienced in this form before. The quirk energy here interacts differently with alien DNA, Ben realized as he phased away rapidly, becoming visible again as he put distance between himself and the shadow entity. Midoriya burst through a door below, eyes locking onto Ben's floating form. There. Ashido. Containment pattern. The pink-haired girl slid into view on a trail of her own acid, demonstrating remarkable control as she launched globules of corrosive fluid in an arc that would trap Ben against a building facade. Time for another switch. Ben activated the Omnitrix again. Heat blast. Fire erupted around his transformed body, a humanoid composed of magma and flame. With a gesture, Ben created a thermal updraft that carried him skyward over Ashido's acid trap. The heat from his body caused the acid to evaporate on approach, creating a momentary steam screen. Fire too, Ashido exclaimed. How many quirks does this guy have? Not quirks, Ben called down, unable to resist a bit of showmanship as flames danced between his fingers. Alien DNA. Alien. Midoriya's eyes widened with fascination rather than disbelief, which surprised Ben. That device on your chest. It contains extraterrestrial genetic material. Quick on the uptake. Green bean, Ben confirmed, impressed by the analytical mind behind those observations. The Omnitrix is basically the universe's greatest collection of alien heroes. Their exchange was interrupted as Dark Shadow launched upward, seemingly less aggressive near heat blast's flames but still determined. Ben countered with a controlled fire blast, careful to moderate the temperature to avoid actual harm. Dark Shadow recoiled with a shriek, retreating to Tokiyami, who stepped back as well. Light and heat diminished Dark Shadow's effectiveness, the bird-headed student explained to his teammates. Then we adapt, Midoriya replied confidently. Ashido, coolant approach. The pink-haired girl nodded, understanding the reference to what must have been a practiced maneuver. She began producing a different form of her acid, more voluminous and with steam rising from it. Endothermic reaction, Ben realized. She's creating a cooling agent. Ashido slid forward on her acid trails, circling the area below Ben while spraying the cooling compound in widening arcs. The ambient temperature began dropping rapidly as the chemical reaction absorbed thermal energy. That's actually pretty smart, Ben admitted, feeling heat blast's flames diminishing slightly. These students weren't just powerful, they were tactically innovative. Midoriya, meanwhile, had positioned himself on a fire escape, muscles tensed for what appeared to be an imminent leap. Tokiyami and Dark Shadow had moved to the opposite side, the shadow entity growing larger and more imposing. As heat blast's flames weakened in the cooling atmosphere. Pincer attack. Ben recognized the classic strategy. Time to really shake things up. He triggered the Omnitrix again. Big chill. N's fiery form was replaced by a moth-like alien with ultramarine skin and large wings that wrapped around his body like a cloak. With a deep breath, he exhaled a freezing vapor that instantly crystallized. Ashido's acid pools into solid masses. Cold too. Ashido slipped on her suddenly frozen acid trail, though she recovered with impressive agility. Big Chill turned intangible as Dark Shadow swept through him. The cold aura of this alien form seemingly disrupting the shadow entity even without physical contact. Tokiyami called back his quirk, reassessing. Midoriya, Tokiyami called. We need a new approach. His versatility exceeds our prepared countermeasures. The green-haired boy had been scribbling notes on a small pad. Even in the middle of combat, Ben noticed with amusement. At Tokiyami's call, Midoriya pocketed the notebook and crackled with energy once more. Direct approach, he called. Triple convergence on my mark. Ben recognized the determination in the boy's eyes. This would be their all-out effort. He decided to meet strength with strength, slapping the Omnitrix symbol once more. Homungosaur. The giant dinosaur-like alien stood 12 feet tall, muscles rippling under thick orange-brown skin as he braced for impact. Midoriya's eyes widened at the transformation but didn't waver in his charge. The boy launched himself with explosive speed, his right arm drawn back and glowing with concentrated power. Smash! Midoriya roared as his fist connected with Homungosaur's crossed arms. The impact was staggering, far stronger than Ben had anticipated. His feet created trenches in the concrete as he slid backward nearly 30 feet. Had he been in human form, that single punch would have been devastating. Okay, that's impressive, Ben acknowledged, shaking out his arms which tingled from absorbing the blow. Meanwhile, Ashido had circled behind him, spraying a concentrated stream of acid that began eating into the concrete around Ben's feet. Simultaneously, Dark Shadow, now expanded to massive proportions in Homungosaur's shadow, moved to engulf him from above. Ben's combat-trained mind processed options in milliseconds. He could transform again, but these students deserved to see what a seasoned hero could do even within a single form. Homungosaur roared, growing another 8 feet in height while simultaneously sweeping his tail in a controlled arc that forced Ashido to dodge backward. With his other hand, he grabbed a nearby broken concrete slab and hurled it through Dark Shadow's semi-solid form, disrupting its cohesion momentarily. Midoriya was already moving again, using Ben's momentary focus on his teammates to approach from a new angle. The boy's tactical awareness was exceptional. He recognized that Ben couldn't track all three simultaneously. Or so he thought. As Midoriya launched what would have been a punishing kick, Ben pivoted with surprising agility for his massive form, catching the boy's leg in a careful grip, firm enough to hold but gentle enough to avoid injury. Got you, Ben rumbled triumphantly. Correction, came Midoriya's calm reply. We've got you. Ben suddenly registered that he couldn't move his feet. Looking down, he saw they were encased in rapidly hardening pink acid that had seeped into a prepared depression in the ground. Simultaneously, Dark Shadow enveloped his upper body from behind. The cold sensation of the shadow entity sending an uncomfortable shiver through Homungosaur's normally resilient form. Containment complete, Tokiyami announced formally. A buzzer sounded overhead. Aizawa's voice came through the speakers. Capture successful. Exercise concluded. Ben chuckled, genuinely impressed as he carefully set Midoriya down. Well played, kids. The acid-hardening properties were a nice touch. Ashido-san's most recent development, Midoriya explained enthusiastically. She can now adjust the solubility coefficient of her acid to create temporary polymeric structures with. Midoriya, you're doing it again, Ashido interrupted with a good-natured eye roll. She turned to Ben with a bright smile that transformed her unusual pink features into something uniquely attractive. That was amazing. How many transformations do you have? Are they all aliens? Do they each have different powers? Can you mix and match abilities? Her rapid-fire questions came with an infectious enthusiasm that Ben couldn't help but respond to. Around 70 active transformations, all aliens from different worlds, each with unique abilities, and no mixing, one alien at a time. 70. Midoriya's eyes practically sparkled. The tactical applications are extraordinary. A completely adaptable response system for any combat scenario. Tokiyami approached more sedately, Dark Shadow now reduced to a smaller form perched on his shoulder. Your abilities are most impressive. Few opponents have disrupted Dark Shadow's cohesion so effectively. The Omnitrix beeped, and in a flash of red light, Ben returned to human form. Ashido quickly dissolved the acid around where his feet had been. Thanks for the workout, Ben said, stretching his now human limbs. You guys are seriously skilled for students. UA only accepts the most promising hero candidates, Tokiyami stated with quiet pride. Ashido bounced on her toes, still energized. Wait till you see what the others can do. Bakugo's explosions are insane, and Todoroki can make ice and fire, and Yaoyorozu can create anything, and Ashido. Aizawa's voice cut through her excited listing as he approached with Keita beside him. The next team is waiting for their turn. The pink-haired girl offered Ben an apologetic grin. We should talk more later. I want to hear about all your aliens. As the first team departed, Ben noticed Keita making notes on a tablet. Her expression remained professional, but he thought he detected a hint of genuine interest beneath the analytical exterior. Observations? Ben asked casually. Your combat experience is evident, she replied without looking up. Situational awareness, tactical adaptation, power modulation to avoid unnecessary harm, all hallmarks of professional training. Are years of on-the-job experience, Ben added. Keita finally met his eyes. Yes, you mentioned being active since age 10. That would be highly irregular in our society, illegal, in fact. Different dimension, different rules, Ben shrugged. Where I'm from, alien invasions don't wait for you to graduate hero school. Something flickered across her face. Not quite skepticism, but careful consideration. Your next opponents are approaching. They've observed your previous match and will have developed countermeasures. Bring it on, Ben grinned, turning to face the next team of students. 4 matches later, Ben stood catching his breath as Aizawa dismissed the final team. He'd won 2 and lost 2, victories against a team with invisibility, sound manipulation, and elastic abilities. And another with electrical powers, creation abilities, and superhuman sugar-fueled strength. His losses came against a powerhouse trio with explosion, ice-fire control, and gravity manipulation. And the final team featuring engine-legged speed, vine hair capture, and frog-like versatility. Throughout the exercises, he'd showcased 12 different alien forms, each demonstrating different tactical approaches. The students had been both challenging opponents and an appreciative audience, many staying to watch even after their own matches concluded. Well, that was illuminating, Aizawa commented, approaching with Principal Nezu who had arrived partway through the session. Your abilities exceed initial assessment. Thanks, I think. Ben wiped sweat from his forehead. Despite the Omnitrix handling most of the physical strain of transformation, the mental exertion of continuous tactical adaptation was taxing. Most promising, Nezu agreed, paws clasped behind his back. Your combat experience is evident, though your approach sometimes lacks the structure our students are developing. I'm more of an improviser, Ben acknowledged. A valuable skill in unpredictable scenarios. Keita interjected, joining their conversation. Her tablet displayed various metrics and notes from the training session. However, our hero society operates within see operational parameters that minimize collateral damage and civilian risk. Midoriya approached hesitantly, still clutching his notebook. Excuse me, but I had a technical question about the Omnitrix's transformation process. Does it recreate the aliens' DNA temporarily or is it more of a matter-energy conversion system? Ben blinked at the detailed technical question. Both, actually. It uses my DNA as a baseline and temporarily overwrites it with the selected alien pattern, while compensating for mass differentials through localized matter-energy conversion. The boy's eyes widened with excitement as he scribbled furiously. Fascinating. The energy requirements must be enormous. What powers it? How does it maintain cellular cohesion during transformation? Does it? Midoriya, Aizawa interrupted firmly. Save your analysis for later. Sorry, sir. The boy bowed apologetically. Ashido appeared beside him, seemingly materializing from the dispersing crowd of students. Hey, Tennyson-kun, some of us are heading to the cafeteria. Wanna join? You can tell us about your dimension. Her invitation came with a bright smile that seemed to illuminate her unusual features, pink skin, black sclera with golden irises, and small horns protruding from wild pink hair. Despite her alien appearance by Earth standards, Ben found her enthusiasm refreshingly familiar. That depends. Ben glanced toward Aizawa and Keita. Am I allowed to socialize, or is that against quirk regulations too? Keita's expression remained neutral, but Ben caught the slight twitch at the corner of her mouth that suggested his comment had almost earned a smile. Social integration would provide valuable observational data, she stated formally. Aizawa shrugged. Just remember the restrictions on unauthorized Omnitrix use. Great. Ashido pumped her fist victoriously. Come on, alien boy, I'm starving after all that acid production. As Ben followed her toward the cafeteria, he found himself surrounded by curious students peppering him with questions. The green-haired Midoriya continued his technical inquiries, while others like the frog girl Asui and earphone jack girl Jiro asked about his home dimension's heroes. So there's no licensing system at all? Jiro asked incredulously. Not for natural disasters or alien invasions, Ben explained. Though we do have agencies like the Lumbers who handle intergalactic threats. Plumbers. Asui tilted her head curiously. Like the people who fix toilets, Hiro. Ben laughed. Different kind of plumbers. They're more like space police. And you've been fighting bad guys since you were 10? Ashido asked, amber eyes wide with interest as they entered the cafeteria, an impressive facility that could have served a small army. Found the Omnitrix on a camping trip. Ben confirmed as they collected trays of food. Attached itself to my wrist, and suddenly I had access to 10 alien heroes. The universe got a lot bigger and a lot more dangerous overnight. 10 initially, 70 now, Midoriya muttered, still taking notes. Evolutionary development or technological upgrade? Both, Ben answered, surprised by the insightful question. The original creator, Azimuth, has modified it several times over the years. As they settled at a table, Ben became aware of Keita taking a seat at a distance, close enough to observe but far enough to give the appearance of privacy. Their eyes met briefly, and Ben offered a small nod of acknowledgement which she returned almost imperceptibly. So, alien boy, Ashido leaned forward, resting her chin on her hands with unabashed interest. Got anyone special waiting for you back in your dimension? The question caught Ben off guard, coming as it did amid technical discussions of the Omnitrix. Not currently. Saving the universe doesn't leave much time for dating. Their loss, Ashido said with a wink that brought an unexpected warmth to Ben's face. Their dating rules as strict as their hero regulations in your dimension. Mina, a black-haired girl with a spiky ponytail, Yaoyorozu, if Ben remembered correctly, admonished gently. He just arrived yesterday. Perhaps I've him time to adjust before personal interrogations. Just being friendly, Ashido replied with an unrepentant grin. Besides, dimensional tourist or not, he's still a teenager, right? Despite himself, Ben found her forthright approach refreshingly different from the careful diplomatic or scientific interest most people showed upon learning about the Omnitrix. After years of being treated as either a weapon or a hero, being treated as simply another teenager was nice. It's fine, Ben assured Yaoyorozu. And to answer your question, Ashido-san, dating rules are probably the one of RSAL constant across dimensions, complicated and impossible to fully understand. This earned laughs from around the table, easing the last of the tension from their earlier combat exercises. For the next hour, Ben found himself enjoying the simple pleasure of lunch with peers who, despite their unusual abilities and different cultural background, reminded him of friends back home. As the lunch period ended and students began heading to afternoon classes, Aizawa appeared to collect Ben. Principal Nezu would like to speak with you regarding your temporary placement here, the teacher explained. Mizuchi-san will accompany us. Ben nodded, rising from the table. Thanks for lunch, he told the students. And the workout earlier. It's been educational. Will you be joining our class? Midoriya asked hopefully. That's what we're going to discuss, Aizawa replied before Ben could answer. As they walked away, Ashido called after them, "See you tomorrow, alien boy. I want to see that crystal transformation again." Keita fell into step beside Ben as they headed toward the administrative building. "You appear to have made a positive impression on Class 1A. They're good kids," Ben replied. "Talented, too. In my dimension, they'd probably have been recruited by the plumbers already. Here, they still have much to learn about the responsibilities of heroism," Keita observed. "As do you. Regarding our society's structure." Ben glanced sideways at her. "You really believe in all these regulations, don't you?" For the first time, something like passion animated her professionally neutral features. "I believe in a system that prevents chaos. Before hero licensing, quirk users fought as vigilantes without accountability. Collateral damage was enormous. Civilian casualties were common. The system exists to ensure power is wielded responsibly." "In theory," Ben acknowledged. "But what about yesterday? If I'd waited for licensed heroes, people would have been hurt." "That's why exceptions exist," she countered smoothly. "And why I've been assigned to you specifically. My role within the Bureau includes evaluating special cases that don't fit neatly within standard parameters." Ben studied her more carefully. "You've dealt with dimensional travelers before." A shadow passed across her features. "Not precisely, but phenomena outside standard quirk classification, yes." Before he could inquire further, they arrived at Nezu's office. The principal sat behind his desk, several documents and a tablet arranged neatly before him. "Ah, Tennyson-san, please, take a seat. I've been reviewing your performance in today's exercises. Most impressive." "Thanks," Ben replied, settling into the offered chair. "Your students gave me a real workout." "Indeed. They learned much from the experience as well." Nezu's cheerful demeanor carried an underlying intelligence that reminded Ben of Azimuth, though with considerably better social skills. "Which brings us to your situation. After consultation with the Quirk Regulation Bureau and the Hero Public Safety Commission, we've developed a proposal." Keita placed a document before Ben. "Provisional Hero Activity License, Special Circumstances Classification. This would grant you limited operational authorization under specific parameters." Ben skimmed the document, which outlined conditions for his stay at UA and use of the Omnitrix. "Supervised training, emergency response only with authorization, full documentation of transformations and capabilities. Standard precautions," Nezu explained. "Similar to what our students operate under, with adjustments for your unique circumstances." "And in return," Ben asked, sensing there was more, "you would be temporarily enrolled in UA's Hero course. Primarily with Class 1A based on today's compatibility assessment. You would participate in their training, sharing your experience while learning our protocols. Additionally," Nezu's eyes twinkled with academic excitement, "our support department and I would very much appreciate the opportunity to study the Omnitrix's dimensional adaptation properties. It may provide insights that could eventually help return you home." Ben considered the proposal. It wasn't ideal. He preferred the freedom he'd enjoyed in his own dimension, but the structure might provide resources he needed to find a way back. "And my government babysitter." Ben nodded toward Keita. "Liaison," she corrected evenly. "I would serve as your designated oversight authority, documentation officer, and emergency authorization contact." "Meaning?" Ben pressed. "Meaning," Keita explained with surprising directness, "that in genuine emergencies, I can grant you operational freedom beyond standard protocols. I would be your advocate within the system, provided you demonstrate good faith compliance." Ben leaned back, weighing his options. The arrangement offered structure, resources, and a degree of legitimacy in this dimension. More importantly, it might be his best chance at finding a way home, or at least understanding why the Omnitrix had brought him here. "All right," he decided. "I accept your terms, Principal Nezu. Provisional license, supervised training, and scientific cooperation. Excellent." Nezu's tail swished with satisfaction. "We'll begin formal integration tomorrow. Mizuchi-san will handle the remaining bureaucratic details and continue as your primary contact." As they exited the office, Keita walked silently beside Ben until they reached the dormitory entrance. "Questions?" she asked, noting his thoughtful expression. Just one for now, Ben replied. You're more than just a bureaucrat, aren't you? The way you move, how you analyzed my fighting style, your knowledge of dimensional anomalies. You're some kind of specialist. Kata regarded him for a long moment, amber eyes unreadable. Yes, my division handles unusual energy phenomena, quirk manifestations that don't follow standard classification, and visitors who don't belong in our world. Visitors plural. I'm not the first. We should save that discussion for another time, she replied carefully. For now, rest. Tomorrow will be your first full day as a provisional UA student. As she turned to leave, Ben called after her. So, does the government babysitter gig include weekends, or do you get time off? For the first time, Kata's composed features broke into what might have been a genuine, if small, smile. Get some rest, Tennyson-san. I suspect Class 1A will demand your full attention tomorrow. Ben watched her walk away, thinking that for a dimensional displacement, things could have gone much worse. He had shelter, a path forward, and perhaps even the beginnings of new allies in this strange world of quirks and licensed heroes. As he entered his dormitory room, the Omnitrix pulsed with an unusual pattern, almost as if responding to the ambient energy of this dimension. Ben studied it curiously, wondering what other surprises this world might hold. Well, Omnitrix, he murmured, looks like we're going to hero school after all. Let's see what we can learn, and maybe figure out how you brought us here in the first place. Chapter 1 End Chapter 2, Adaptation. Ben's first morning as a provisional UA student began with the blaring of an unfamiliar alarm. Groaning, he fumbled or his phone before remembering he wasn't in his own bedroom, or even his own dimension. The standard issue UA alarm clock continued its merciless assault until Ben finally located the off switch. 7 a.m., he muttered, rubbing sleep from his eyes. Some things are universal constants. A neatly folded UA uniform waited on his desk chair. Someone had delivered it while he slept. Ben examined the gray jacket and green striped tie with mild distaste. After years of choosing his own distinctively casual style, the formal uniform felt like yet another reminder of how regulated this world was. At least it's not a plumber's badge, he conceded, referring to the intergalactic peacekeepers from his dimension, not the people who fixed toilets, a distinction he'd need to keep clarifying in this world. As Ben finished dressing, a firm knock interrupted his attempts to properly knot the tie. He abandoned the tangled fabric and opened the door to find Kata Mizuchi waiting in the hallway. Today, she wore a dark blue blazer over a crisp white shirt, looking every bit the government official while maintaining the underlying readiness of someone prepared for sudden combat. Good morning, Tennyson-san, she greeted, eyes immediately noting the mangled tie. Without comment, she reached forward, nimble fingers undoing his failed attempt before expertly recreating the knot in seconds. You'll be expected to manage this yourself tomorrow. Never needed a tie to save the universe before, Ben replied with a half smile, though he nodded his thanks. Different universe, different protocols, Kata countered smoothly, echoing his words from yesterday. Are you prepared for your first day of classes? Ben grabbed the tablet he'd been issued, which contained his schedule and campus map. Quote, as ready as I'll ever be for high school. Again, UA isn't ordinary high school, Kata reminded him as they walked through the halls. Morning sunlight streamed through large windows, illuminating other students emerging from their rooms in various states of wakefulness. Several nodded respectfully to Kata or cast curious glances at Ben. I attended classes in my dimension too, Ben noted, though admittedly with more frequent alien interruptions than homework completion. Your academic records have been reviewed, Kata said, surprising Ben. Spotty attendance, inconsistent performance. Though occasional flashes of aptitude in sciences when the subject matter aligned with your extracurricular activities. Ben's eyebrows rose. You researched my school records. How is that even possible across dimensions? For the first time, something like discomfort crossed Kata's composed features. The dimensional boundary between our worlds has been thinning. Information bleeds through in unexpected ways. It's part of why your arrival has generated such interest at the Bureau. Before Ben could pursue this concerning revelation, they emerged into the main campus court. Yard where students streamed toward the imposing main building. The morning air carried a crisp freshness that reminded Ben of early autumn in Bellwood, creating an unexpected pang of homesickness. Your homeroom begins in 20 minutes. Keita noted, consulting her phone. Class 1A, with Aizawa-sensei. I'll escort you today, but beginning tomorrow, you'll be expected to navigate independently. As they crossed the courtyard, a familiar voice called out, "Alien boy." Ben turned to see Ashido jogging toward them, her pink complexion practically glowing in the morning light. Her uniform was worn with personalized flair, jacket open, tie slightly loosened, and what appeared to be custom shoes replacing the standard loafers. "Tennyson-san, you're really joining our class." Her smile was infectious, golden eyes sparkling with excitement. "Provisional enrollment," Ben confirmed, surprised by how pleased he felt at her enthusiasm. "Still figuring out how all this works. Well, you've got the best guide right here," Ashido declared, pointing at herself with both thumbs. "I know all the unwritten rules, best lunch spots, and which teachers let you slide on homework." Keita cleared her throat. "Ashido-san, I believe punctuality would be the most valuable lesson to impart at present." Rather than being intimidated by the government agent's formal demeanor, Ashido merely grinned wider. "Right you are, Mizuchi-san. Come on, Ben, I'll show you the shortcut to class." She grabbed Ben's wrist, the one without the Omnitrix, and began pulling him toward the main building. Ben glanced back at Keita, who merely nodded once, indicating he should proceed with Ashido. "So you're really from another dimension?" Ashido asked as they navigated hallways bustling with students. "That's even cooler than being from America or something." "Definitely different," Ben agreed, oddly comfortable with her casual physical contact as she guided him through the crowd. "Everything here is similar enough to be familiar but different enough to be confusing." "Like what?" she asked, genuine curiosity in her expression. "Well, for one thing, superheroes are way more regulated here," Ben explained. "Where I'm from, if you have powers and want to help people, you just do it. No licensing, no training requirements." Ashido's eyes widened. "That sounds chaotic." "It can be," Ben admitted as they climbed a staircase. "But it also means when threats appear, response is immediate. No paperwork required to save lives." Ashido considered this as they reached a classroom door marked 1A. "I never thought about it that way. Here, we're so focused on doing things properly that sometimes I wonder if we forget why we wanted to be heroes in the first place." Ben studied her with newfound appreciation. Beneath the bubbly exterior was a thoughtful mind considering the philosophical implications of their different systems. "Your way has advantages too," he offered. "Better training, coordination, probably fewer collateral damage lawsuits." Ashido laughed, the sound bright and unrestrained. "Oh man, I bet you have some stories about that. You'll have to tell me sometime." Before Ben could respond, the classroom door slid open to reveal Aizawa. The perpetually exhausted-looking teacher regarded them with the flat expression that seemed to be his default. "Ashido, Tennyson, you're cutting it close, but not late," Ashido declared triumphantly, checking an imaginary watch. 2 minutes to spare." Aizawa merely grunted and stepped aside, allowing them to enter. The classroom was arranged in traditional rows, most seats already occupied by the students Ben had met during yesterday's training exercises. Conversation died down as he entered, 20 pairs of eyes focusing on him with varying degrees of curiosity and assessment. "Sit there," Aizawa directed, pointing to an empty desk that had been added at the back of the room. "Ashido, your seat." As Ben made his way to the designated desk, he noted the barely concealed excitement from Midoriya, who appeared to be restraining himself from launching into questions. Others, like the dual-haired Todoroki, observed with calm neutrality, while the explosive Bakugo watched with undisguised suspicion. Once seated, Aizawa addressed the class. "As you've noticed, we have a provisional addition to Class 1A. Ben Nyson will be participating in hero training as part of an international exchange program." Ben recognized the cover story for what it was, a simplified explanation that avoided mentioning interdimensional travel. Smart move, considering how such information might disrupt classroom dynamics or potentially leak beyond UA's controlled environment. Tennyson has a unique transformation quirk that allows him to assume multiple forms with various abilities, Aizawa continued. Many of you witnessed these forms during yesterday's training exercise. He'll be with us while a special accommodation process is completed. The red-haired student Ben recalled as Kirishima raised his hand. As this related to that villain incident downtown 2 days ago. The one with the crystal hero. Aizawa's expression didn't change. That situation is under investigation by the appropriate authorities. Now, regarding today's schedule. Why is he getting special treatment? Bakugo interrupted, his sharp gaze fixed on Ben. International exchange or not, hero students spend years qualifying for UA. What makes him so special? The blunt question hung in the air. Ben maintained eye contact with Bakugo, recognizing the challenge for what it was, a territorial assertion from someone used to being at the top of the hierarchy. Bakugo, Aizawa's tone carried a warning edge. No, it's a fair question, Ben interjected. Deciding directness was the best approach. In my case, I've been actively using my quirk since I was 10 years old. Practical experience rather than conventional training. Bakugo's eyes narrowed. Anyone can claim experience. Proving it's another matter. You saw me yesterday, Ben reminded him. I saw party tricks against Deku and friends, Bakugo replied dismissively. Real combat's different. Attention settled over the classroom. Ben had encountered this type of challenge countless times across multiple worlds, the local alpha testing the newcomer. The dynamics might change, but certain constants remained universal. Perhaps, Aizawa interrupted before Ben could respond, this energy would be better directed toward today's joint training exercise. Ben and Bakugo maintained eye contact for another moment before both reluctantly shifting attention back to their teacher. As scheduled, Class 1A will be conducting collaborative training with Class 1B this afternoon. The addition of Tennyson provides an opportunity to adjust our team compositions. Aizawa consulted his tablet. We'll be focusing on rescue operations in compromised structures, a simulation of post-disaster hero work. As Aizawa continued outlining the day's schedule, Ashido turned in her seat to flash Ben an encouraging thumbs up. From 2 seats over, Midoriya was already scribbling notes while occasionally glancing at the Omnitrix with undisguised scientific curiosity. The morning proceeded with academic subjects, mathematics, literature, and history, which provided Ben with an unexpected challenge. While the Omnitrix had always provided language translation capabilities, allowing him to understand and speak Japanese, the cultural context and educational differences between dimensions created occasional confusion. During literature class, the references to historical periods unique to this world left him struggling to keep up. During a brief break between classes, Iya approached Ben's desk with barely contained excitement. Tennyson-san, I've been analyzing your transformations from yesterday, he began without preamble, opening a notebook filled with surprisingly detailed sketches and annotations. I documented 12 distinct forms, each with unique physiological characteristics and ability sets. Is there a taxonomic classification system for the species represented? Ben blinked, impressed despite himself. You drew all these from memory. Quirk analysis is kind of his thing, Ashido explained, leaning against a nearby desk. Midoriya's basically a walking encyclopedia of hero capabilities. It's just a hobby, Midoriya insisted, though his eyes remained fixed on the Omnitrix. But your device, it contains actual extraterrestrial genetic samples. The scientific implications are extraordinary. Each alien comes from a different planet, Ben confirmed, finding Midoriya's enthusiastic curiosity refreshing. Different environments created different evolutionary paths. The crystalline one, Diamond Head, comes from a planet with silicon-based life forms. The fire one, Heat Blast, evolved on a star. Midoriya's pencil moved at blinding speed across his notebook. Fascinating. And the device itself, does it maintain a stable quantum state during transformation? The mass displacement alone would require. Midoriya, Yaoyorozu interrupted gently, joining their growing circle. Perhaps give Tennyson-san a moment to adjust before the full scientific interrogation. The green-haired boy blushed. Sorry, I get carried away with quirk analysis. It's fine, Ben assured him. Actually, it's nice to talk with someone who understands the scientific aspects. Most people just see the flash and the monsters. They're not monsters though, are they? Midoriya's insight surprised Ben. They're sentient species with cultures and civilizations. The Omnitrix doesn't just give you their physical forms, it must impart some instinctual knowledge as well. Ben nodded slowly, increasingly impressed by Midoriya's perceptiveness. Exactly. I get basic instincts and some knowledge, though not complete memories or personalities. That's so manly, Kirishima exclaimed, joining the conversation. Like having dozens of pro-heroes inside you, ready to tag in. The red-haired student extended a hand that hardened into jagged stone before Ben's eyes. Eijiro Kirishima, my hardening quirk's nothing compared to your crystal guy, but I'd love to compare notes sometime. As Ben shook the offered hand, noting the curious sensation of stone that remained somehow warm, more classmates gathered around, introducing themselves properly. The earphone jack girl, Jiro, asked about sound-based aliens. The electricity user, Kaminari, wondered if any of Ben's transformations could generate similar powers. Even the quiet Todoroki approached, though he merely observed without asking questions. Only Bakugo remained at his desk, watching the interaction with narrowed eyes. The impromptu meet and greet ended when Present Mike arrived for English class, a subject where Ben found himself unexpectedly advantaged. His native English proficiency earned approving nods from the exuberant teacher, though Ben struggled not to laugh at the man's over-the-top presentation style and rockstar-like appearance. When lunchtime arrived, Ben found himself swept along with a group of 1A students toward the cafeteria. Ashido claimed the seat beside him, while Midoriya, Uraraka, Kirishima, and Kaminari completed their table. So in your dimension, pros don't need licenses? Kirishima asked between bites of rice. That's wild. We have organizations like the Plumbers, Ben explained, discovering that the Japanese curry served at UA was unexpectedly delicious. But they're more about coordinating response to major threats than regulating individual heroes. Plumbers. Uraraka tilted her head curiously. Like for fixing pipes? Ben chuckled. That's what everyone asks. No, they're intergalactic peacekeepers. Kind of like space police. Space police, Kaminari repeated, eyes wide. Dude, your dimension sounds like an awesome video game. Trust me, it's less awesome when you're being hunted by intergalactic bounty hunters or fighting dimension-hopping conquerors, Ben replied, though he couldn't help but smile at their enthusiasm. Is that how you ended up here? Ashido asked, leaning closer. Some kind of dimensional battle gone wrong. Ben nodded, sobering slightly. I was pursuing a time-manipulating alien named Eon. He opened a dimensional portal. I followed as Jetre, my flying alien form, and something went wrong. Next thing I knew, I was here in your Tokyo. Musutafu, Midoriya corrected gently. We're in Musutafu City, thou. It's part of the greater Tokyo metropolitan area. So you have family back there? Uraraka asked, her expression softening with concern. They must be worried about you. The question struck an unexpected chord. In the chaos of arrival and adaptation, Ben had pushed aside thoughts of home, of Grandpa Max organizing plumber search parties, of Gwen and Kevin investigating ways to find him, of his parents facing yet another unexplained absence. Yeah, he acknowledged quietly. My grandfather, my cousin Gwen, my friend Kevin. My parents. They're probably turning the universe upside down looking for me right now. A moment of sympathetic silence fell over the table before Ashido placed a reassuring hand on Ben's arm. Then we'll help you find a way back. UA has some of the best scientific minds in Japan. If anyone can figure out interdimensional travel, it's our support department. Her optimism was infectious, and Ben found himself smiling despite the pang of homesickness. Thanks. I appreciate that. Speaking of science, Midoriya ventured carefully. Have you spoken with Power Loader Sensei yet? He oversees our support department and might have insights about your device's interaction with our world. That's actually scheduled for later today, Ben confirmed. Apparently my Omnitrix is of great interest to your support department. I bet Hatsume's already drooling over the possibility of studying it. Uraraka commented with a knowing grin. She's a support course student who's a bit enthusiastic about new technology. Enthusiastic like a tornado is a light breeze. Kaminari added with a dramatic shudder. As lunch continued, Ben noticed Keita seated several tables away, maintaining discreet observation while engaging in what appeared to be a professional conversation with another teacher. Their eyes met briefly, and Ben offered a small nod which she acknowledged with a nearly imperceptible inclination of her head. "What's the deal with your government handler?" Ashido asked, following Ben's gaze. "She seems super intense." "Mizuchi-san is my liaison," Ben replied, making air quotes. "Apparently dimensional visitors need supervision in your highly regulated world. The Quirk Regulation Bureau usually deals with dangerous quirk manifestations or unauthorized usage," Midoriya explained thoughtfully. "Assigning an agent directly to an individual is unusual. They must consider your situation highly significant." Before Ben could respond, a notification chimed from the tablets each student carried. Midoriya checked his and announced, "N minutes until joint training with Class 1B. We should head to Training Ground Gamma." As they disposed of their lunch trays and headed toward the exit, Ben found Ashido walking beside him again. Her natural enthusiasm creating an easy companionship that reminded him of his friends back home. "Fair warning about 1B, she said as they crossed the campus grounds. "They're kind of our rivals. Totally have a chip on their shoulder about being the other hero class." "Rivals?" Ben asked. "You're all training to be heroes, right? Why the competition?" Ashido shrugged. "Ooh, a tradition, I guess. 1A gets more attention because of some incidents we've been involved in, and 1B feels overlooked. Their class rep, Kendo, is cool though, she keeps them in line." Training Ground Gamma proved to be an elaborate facility designed to simulate an industrial zone. Pipelines, storage tanks, catwalks, and factory buildings created a complex three-dimensional environment perfect for testing mobility and rescue techniques. Class 1B was already present when they arrived, 20 students in matching gym uniforms standing in formation beside a stern-looking woman with short pale blue hair and remarkably sharp teeth. "That's Vlad King-sensei," Ashido whispered to Ben. 1B's homeroom teacher. Aizawa approached his counterpart, and the two teachers conferred briefly before addressing the combined classes. "Today's joint exercise focuses on disaster response," Aizawa announced without preamble. "The scenario: an industrial accident has compromised structural integrity throughout the facility. Civilian volunteers are trapped in various locations. Your objective is to locate and safely extract all civilians while minimizing further structural damage." Vlad King stepped forward. "You'll operate in mixed teams of 4, 2 students from each class per team. This exercise tests not only your rescue capabilities but your ability to collaborate with unfamiliar partners." As the teachers began announcing team assignments, Ben noted the curious and occasionally suspicious glances from Class 1B students. His presence had clearly not gone unnoticed. Team 3, Aizawa continued, Ashido and Tennyson from 1A. Partnered with Kendo and Monoma from 1B. Ashido gave an excited little hop beside Ben. "We're teammates." From the 1B ranks, a tall girl with orange hair tied in a side ponytail stepped forward. She carried herself with quiet confidence that reminded Ben of Gwen, someone accustomed to leadership and responsibility. Beside her, a blond boy with a distinctly smug expression. Seijin regarded Ben with undisguised interest. Itsuka Kendo, the orange-haired girl, introduced herself with a polite bow. "Class 1B representative, Ben Tennyson," he replied, returning the gesture somewhat awkwardly. "Dimensional visitor and provisional student." "Oh, we've heard all about you," the blond boy, Monoma, interjected with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "The mysterious student with the miraculous transformation quirk. How convenient that you appeared just in time to join the illustrious Class 1A. Monoma," Kendo sighed with practiced patience, "we literally just met him. Save the rivalry speech for after the exercise. I'm simply acknowledging our good fortune," Kendo, Monoma replied, his attention still fixed on Ben. "After all, it's not every day we get to witness this supposed multiple transformation ability firsthand. Trust me, it's pretty impressive," Ashido defended, propping her hands on her hips. "He took on 3 of us at once yesterday." "Did he?" Monoma's eyebrow arched. "And the outcome?" "They won, actually," Ben admitted candidly. "Your classmates here are pretty good." Something in Ben's straightforward acknowledgement seemed to catch Kendo's attention. She studied him more carefully, as if reassessing her initial impression. Further conversation was interrupted as Aizawa outlined the exercise parameters. Each team would be assigned a sector of the facility. Civilian, Volunteers, actually third-year students playing roles, had been placed in various predicaments throughout the training ground. Teams would have 30 minutes to locate and extract as many as possible while navigating structural hazards. Additional challenge, Vlad King added with a sharp-toothed smile. Random structural failures will occur throughout the exercise. Present mic will provide audio effects to simulate real disaster conditions. That means it'll be loud and chaotic, Ashido explained to Ben. Communication gets tough. Teams redirected to their starting positions around the perimeter of the training ground. As Team 3 made their way to the northeastern sector, Kendo fell into step beside Ben. "So, Tennyson-san," she began conversationally. "Vlad King Sensei mentioned you have transformation abilities." "That's right," Ben confirmed, noting her analytical gaze. "The Omnitrix allows me to transform into different alien species." "Aliens?" Kendo's eyebrows rose. "Not animals or elements. Extraterrestrial life forms," Ben clarified. "Each with unique physiologies and abilities." "Fascinating," she commented, though her tone remained professionally neutral. "And your experience with rescue operations?" "Extensive, though not always by the book," Ben admitted. "Where I'm from, we prioritize adaptability over procedure." "Procedure exists for a reason," Kendo noted, though without condescension. "Especially in rescue scenarios where civilians' safety depends on coordinated efforts." "Fair point," Ben conceded. "That's partly why I'm here, to learn your methods." Something in his honest response seemed to satisfy her. "Well, you'll get a crash course today. Monoma and I have trained extensively in disaster response. If you follow our lead, we should work well together." They reached their designated starting position, a corner of the facility bordered by storage tanks and elevated pipelines. Ashido bounced lightly on her toes, clearly excited for the exercise to begin. "Strategy session," she declared. "What's our plan of attack?" "First, reconnaissance," Kendo replied without hesitation. "We need to map structural weaknesses and locate civilian positions before attempting extraction." "Agreed," Ben nodded, impressed by her methodical approach. "Any quirk abilities particularly suited to this scenario?" Kendo raised her hands, which suddenly expanded to many times their normal size. "My big fist quirk allows for structural support, debris clearing, and civilian transport. I can copy quirks through physical contact," Monoma explained, adjusting his sleeves. "One quirk at a time, for approximately 5 minutes. Acid for melting obstacles and creating safe pathways," Ashido added cheerfully. A pink glow emanating from her palms. "Plus incredible agility for accessing difficult spots." 3 pairs of eyes turned expectantly to Ben. "I have options depending on what we encounter," he said, tapping the Omnitrix. "For initial reconnaissance, something with enhanced senses and mobility would work best." A loud horn signaled the exercise's start. Immediately, Preza, NT Mike's amplified voice created the simulated chaos of disaster conditions. Alarm klaxons, crumbling metal, and panicked civilian sounds blended into a disorienting cacophony. "Let's move," Kendo directed, immediately assuming leadership. "Tennyson-san, if you have a form suited for reconnaissance, now would be the time." Ben nodded, activating the Omnitrix. As the familiar alien silhouettes appeared in the holographic display, he selected one particularly well suited for the task at hand. Wildmutt. The transformation washed over him in a flash of green light. His human form was replaced by a quadrupedal alien resembling a massive, orange-furred canine without eyes, instead featuring multiple gill-like nostrils along its neck and shoulders. Ashido gasped in delight. "Dog alien. So cool." Monoma's eyes widened slightly, his first genuine reaction. "Fascinating. Complete physiological transformation." Kendo, ever practical, refocused quickly. "Can he understand us in this form?" Ben, now Wildmutt, gave a confirming growl and nodded his massive head. While lacking vocal cords for human speech in this form, his intelligence remained intact. "Perfect," Kendo decided. "Tennyson-san, scout ahead using your enhanced senses. Ashido, prepare acid solutions for potential obstacles. Monoma, stay near me for now, copy my quirk if we encounter heavy debris." Wildmutt bounded forward, navigating the complex industrial terrain with natural agility. Though eyeless, His specialized sensory organs detected heat signatures, air currents, and even the unique scent patterns of individuals. Within moments, he had located 3 civilians, third-year students pretending to be trapped under lightweight rubble or in precariously balanced structures. Returning to the team, Ben communicated the locations through gestures and growls that Ashido surprisingly seemed adept at interpreting. He says 3 civilians, 1 under collapsed scaffolding 60 meters northeast, 2 trapped in an elevated control room with compromised access stairs. How did you understand all that? Monoma asked skeptically. Ashido shrugged. I've always been good with animals. Guess it works for alien dogs too. Kendo made a quick decision. We'll split up. Ashido and I will handle the control room extraction. Monoma, stay with Tennyson for the scaffolding victim. Use your copied quirk if needed for structural support. As the teams separated, Ben led Monoma toward the collapsed scaffolding. The 1B student kept pace well, his previous smugness replaced by professional focus that Ben found shingly familiar, reminiscent of plumber field operations where personality differences were set aside during missions. They reached the scaffold collapse site where a third-year student lay partially covered by metal beams, convincingly playing the role of an injured civilian. Careful, Monoma cautioned as Wildmud approached the debris. That supporting column is unstable. One wrong move could bring the entire structure down. Ben assessed the situation through Wildmud's unique senses. The civilian wasn't actually trapped. The debris had been carefully arranged to simulate entrapment without causing real danger. However, the scenario called for treating the situation as genuinely hazardous. Ben slapped the Omnitrix symbol on his shoulder, triggering another transformation. 4 arms. His form shifted into a massive, 4-armed humanoid with red skin and extraordinary strength. Monoma took an involuntary step backward, clearly impressed despite himself. Multiple forms, he murmured. Not just cosmetic changes, complete physiological reconfiguration. Each with different abilities, 4 arms confirmed in Ben's voice, though deeper and more resonant. This one's good for heavy lifting. Analyzing the debris pattern, Ben carefully identified the load-bearing elements. With methodical precision, he lifted the primary support beam while simultaneously bracing the adjacent structure with his additional limbs. Impressive structural awareness, Monoma noted, touching Ben's arm briefly. A faint glow surrounded him as his quirk activated. I'll support the secondary frame. To Ben's surprise, Monoma's arms turned red and doubled in number, creating a less muscular but recognizable copy of 4 arms' appearance. Together, they stabilized the debris while extracting the civilian victim secure, Monoma reported once they had moved the third year to a safe distance. Good teamwork, Ben acknowledged, genuinely impressed by how quickly Monoma had adapted to the copied abilities. The blonde student studied his temporarily transformed arms with scientific interest. Your DNA must be fundamentally altered during transformation. My quirk has never responded quite like this before. Before Ben could inquire further, a tremendous crash echoed from the direction where Kendo and Ashido had gone. Without hesitation, Ben leapt toward the sound, his 4-arm form easily clearing obstacles in powerful bounds. They arrived to find a serious situation developing. What had apparently begun as a controlled scenario had turned dangerous when an actual structural failure occurred. Real debris had fallen, blocking the exit route from the control room where Kendo, Ashido, and the 2 civilian students were now trapped. Worse, the platform was visibly tilting, its support struts compromised. Kendo, Monoma called up. Status. Support failure wasn't simulated, she replied tensely. Platform's giving way. We need evacuation options. Ben immediately assessed the situation. The platform was approximately 30 feet above ground level, tilted at an increasing angle as its supports continued to fail. Ashido was using her acid to try creating handholds along the wall. But the process was too slow for the rapidly deteriorating structure. I've got this, Ben decided, slapping the Omnitrix symbol again. Swampfire. His massive 4-armed foe. Was replaced by a humanoid plant alien with a flame-patterned head and the acrid smell of methane emanating from various pores. Immediately, Ben extended his arms, which stretched and grew like idly expanding vines toward the tilting platform. Grab hold, he called up, his voice now carrying a distinctive swampy resonance. Kendo reacted instantly, her leadership instincts taking over. Civilians first. Ashido, guide them. The two third-year students grabbed onto Ben's extended vine-like arms, which carefully lowered them to safety. As they touched ground, another support strut failed, causing the platform to lurch dangerously. Ashido, go, Kendo commanded, her enlarged hands bracing against the wall to stabilize the failing structure. Not without you, Ashido refused, sliding to Kendo's side. I'm maintaining structural integrity, Kendo explained through gritted teeth, her enlarged hands visibly straining. The moment I let go, this whole thing collapses. Ben recognized the dilemma immediately. Monoma, can you still copy powers? The blonde student nodded, though his earlier copied abilities had already faded. Copy Kendo's quirk and take over bracing, Ben directed, seamlessly falling into tactical command mode developed through years of crisis management. I'll reconfigure for a better rescue option. Without hesitation, Monoma touched Kendo's arm, his hands immediately enlarging to match hers. Position mirror, he called, placing his enlarged hands exactly where Kendo's had been. I've got it. Switch now. With perfect synchronization, they exchanged positions, allowing Kendo to move toward the platform's edge where Ben's vine arms waited. The structure groaned ominously. It's failing completely, Monoma warned, his enlarged hands beginning to slip against the buckling metal. 30 seconds at most. Ben needed a more comprehensive solution. Everyone, hold on, he called, slapping the Omnitrix again. Goop. His plant-like form dissolved into a shifting mass of green slime, controlled by a small anti-gravity projector floating above. The amorphous alien quickly expanded, flowing up to engulf the entire platform. Ashido, Kendo, ND Monoma in a protective gelatinous coating. What the? Monoma began. Relax, Ben's voice came from all around them, slightly distorted through the viscous medium. I'll absorb the impact. As the final supports gave way, the platform collapsed. Instead of a catastrophic crash, Ben's goop form acted as a perfect impact dampener, allowing the humans within his protective mass to descend slowly to the ground. Once safely down, he flowed away from them, reforming into his humanoid shape. Everyone okay? He asked, the anti-gravity projector bobbing above his amorphous head. Ashido stared at him with undisguised amazement. That was amazing. You turned into living slime. Polymorph, Ben corrected automatically. Goop's species can control their molecular density and adhesion properties. Kendo was brushing the residual slime from her uniform, her expression thoughtful. Quick thinking, Tennyson-san. Unorthodox, but effective. Sometimes unorthodox is exactly what the situation calls for, Ben replied. A slow clap interrupted their moment. All four turned to see Aizawa and Vlad King approaching, the latter being the source of the applause. Impressive adaptation to unexpected circumstances, Vlad King commented, his sharp teeth visible in what appeared to be a genuine smile. The structural failure wasn't planned, that support actually gave way due to metal fatigue. Your team's response demonstrated excellent crisis management, Aizawa added, his typically flat expression unchanged despite the praise. Particularly the role distribution based on quirk capabilities. Ben transformed back to human form with a flash of red light, the Omnitrix timing out. Kendo's leadership made the difference, he acknowledged honestly. She established clear protocols from the start. The orange-haired girl looked momentarily surprised by the credit, but recovered quickly. It was collaborative. Tennyson-san's versatility gave us options we wouldn't otherwise have had. Regardless, Team 3 has successfully completed their assigned sector, Aizawa noted, checking his tablet. You may observe the remaining teams or proceed to debrief. As the teachers moved on to monitor other groups, Monoma turned to Ben with an evaluative gaze that had lost much of its earlier hostility. Your abilities are even more impressive in application than rumor suggested, he admitted. Though I remain curious about certain inconsistencies. Like what? Ben asked, brushing leftover slime residue from his sleeve. Your transformations, Monoma replied. When I copied your four-armed form, I sensed something different from ordinary quirk energy. Almost as if. He was interrupted by Ashido's excited squeal as she grabbed Ben's arm. That was so cool. You were like 3 different heroes in 5 minutes. The plant vines, the slime bubble, I've never seen anything like it. Just doing what comes naturally, Ben replied with a modest shrug, though he couldn't help feeling pleased by her enthusiasm. After years of heroics becoming routine, seeing his abilities through fresh eyes was unexpectedly rewarding. Your control is remarkable, Kendo observed more analytically. Most transformation quirks I've encountered involve significant mental adjustment or learning curves. You switch between forms with practiced precision. 7 years of practice helps, Ben explained. I received the Omnitrix when I was 10. Learned most forms the hard way, trial by fire, usually literally. 10. Kendo's eyebrows rose. That's extremely young for quirk manifestation. It's not a quirk, Ben reminded her. Where I'm from, it's technology, created by the most brilliant inventor in 5 galaxies, according to him. The conversation paused as they reached the observation platform where other completed teams were gathering to watch the remaining exercise. Ben noticed Keita standing with the other teachers, her tablet in hand as she documented the training session. Your government shadow never misses a thing, does she? Ashido whispered, following Ben's gaze. Comes with the territory, Ben replied. Interdimensional visitors apparently warrant special attention. Kendo, who had overheard, studied Keita with newfound interest. Interdimensional. That explains the unusual energy signatures Monoma sensed. You believe that claim? Monoma asked, rejoining them after briefly speaking with other 1B students. Kendo gave him a measured look. You felt it yourself when you copied his abilities. That wasn't standard quirk energy. Ben observed their exchange with interest. Despite this world's highly regulated approach to superpowers, these students seemed surprisingly open to concepts beyond their established understanding. Perhaps growing up in a world where people routinely defied physical laws made the conceptual leap to alternate dimensions less challenging. The remaining exercise played out over the next 20 minutes. Ben watched with professional interest as the other teams navigated their rescue scenarios, noting the diverse quirk applications and team dynamics. Bakugo's team was particularly noteworthy, despite his aggressive personality. The explosive student demonstrated surprising precision in using his quirk to create controlled demolitions that cleared paths for evacuation. When the final horn sounded, all teams gathered for debrief. Aizawa and Vlad King provided clinical assessment of each team's performance, highlighting both successes and areas for improvement. Ben's team received specific commendation for adaptive crisis response, though Aizawa noted they should have established clearer communication protocols before splitting up. As the formal debrief concluded, students began breaking into smaller conversation groups. Kendo approached Ben while Ashido was temporarily distracted by Hagakure and Jiro. I'd like to speak with you more about your tactical experience, she said directly. Your approach during the platform collapse showed training beyond what most students here possess. I've had good teachers, Ben replied, and plenty of real-world application. We have additional joint training sessions scheduled throughout the semester, Kendo continued. I believe both our classes could benefit from your perspective, particularly regarding adaptability in crisis situations. Ben recognized the professional respect underlying her request. I'd be happy to share what I've learned. Though I should warn you, my methods aren't always by the book. Sometimes the book needs revision, Kendo replied with a small smile that transformed her serious demeanor. Innovation often comes from questioning established protocols. Their conversation was interrupted as Aizawa called Ben's name. Tennyson, your scheduled meeting with Power Loader begins in 10 minutes. Mizuchi-san will escort you. Ben nodded acknowledgement, then turned back to Kendo. Duty calls, but I'd like to continue this conversation tomorrow, perhaps, she suggested. Early morning training sessions in Gym Gamma. Several of us practice independently before classes. I'll be there, Ben promised, surprised by how quickly he was developing connections in this new world. As Keita approached to escort him, Ben noticed Ashido watching his interaction with Kendo with curious interest. She caught his eye and gave an exaggerated wink that brought an unexpected warmth to his cheeks. Successful exercise? Keita asked as they walked toward the support department. More or less, Ben replied. The structural failure wasn't planned, but we adapted. I observed, she noted. Your polymorph form was an elegant solution. Unconventional but effective. Ben glanced at her, surprised. You know about polymorphs? A momentary tension crossed her features before she replied carefully, "I've been briefed on your documented transformations. The Bureau maintains detailed records. Records that shouldn't exist in this dimension," Ben pointed out. "How exactly are you getting information about my aliens?" Kata maintained her professionally neutral expression. "That discussion should wait until after your meeting with Power Loader. The support department's analysis may provide context for what I need to explain." The cryptic response only heightened Ben's curiosity, but he recognized the tactical deflection for what it was. Whatever information Kata possessed about interdimensional matters, she wasn't ready to share it without proper preparation. They arrived at a large industrial facility marked Development Studio. Even from outside, Ben could hear the sounds of machinery, occasional minor explosions, and excited technical discussions. "Power Loader oversees UA's support department, CA," Ida explained as they approached the entrance. "Students here develop support items, technological enhancements that complement heroes' quirks or compensate for limitations. Like Reed Richards' lab but with teenagers," Ben commented. "What could possibly go wrong?" Kata actually smiled at that. A brief but genuine expression. "An apt comparison. I suggest maintaining a safe distance from Hatsume-san's workstation." The interior of the development studio resembled a cross between a high-tech engineering lab and a chaotic workshop. Students in protective gear worked at various stations surrounded by components, tools, and half-completed devices that defied easy categorization. A man in an excavator-like helmet directed activities from a central platform. "Power Loader Sensei," Kata greeted formally. "Tennyson-san is here as scheduled." The helmet turned toward them, revealing a face partially obscured by protective equipment. "Ah, our interdimensional visitor. Welcome to the support department." "Thanks for having me," Ben replied, eyes roaming over the fascinating array of technology. Some devices looked surprisingly advanced while others had a distinctly steampunk aesthetic. "The principal has briefed me on your situation," Power Loader continued, leading them toward a specialized workstation set apart from the main floor. "Particularly regarding your transformation device. I understand it's called the Omnitrix." Ben nodded, instinctively covering the device with his other hand. "Created by an alien genius named Azimuth. It contains DNA samples from sentient species across the universe." "Fascinating," Power Loader murmured. "And you believe it's functioning differently since arriving in our dimension?" "The transformation energy has a different resonance," Ben confirmed. "And there's a subtle vibration I've never felt before. That aligns with our initial readings," Power Loader noted, activating a holographic display. "During yesterday's training exercise, sensors detected unusual energy fluctuations whenever you transformed. Not just from the Omnitrix itself, but affecting ambient quirk energy in the vicinity." The display showed wave-like patterns that pulsed and interacted. Ben recognized the familiar Omnitrix energy signature, but it was indeed behaving differently, creating harmonic resonances with the background energy that permeated this dimension. "It's synchronizing," Ben realized. "The Omnitrix is adapting to your world's natural energy field, what you call quirk energy." Power Loader nodded. "Precisely our hypothesis. May I?" He gestured toward the Omnitrix. Ben hesitated briefly before extending his wrist. Years of protecting the Omnitrix from those who would misuse it had created instinctive caution, but he sensed no malicious intent here, only scientific curiosity. Power Loader used a handheld scanner that projected a three-dimensional rendering of the Omnitrix's internal structure, or at least, as much as the device could penetrate. "Extraordinary," the teacher murmured. "The quantum architecture is unlike anything in our database. Micro-components that seem to exist in multiple states simultaneously. Energy pathways that defy conventional physics." Quote, "Azimuth is pretty much the Einstein of his dimension," Ben explained. "Or maybe more like Einstein, Tesla, and Reed Richards combined." "Amazing." The enthusiastic exclamation came from behind them. Ben turned to find himself face to face with a pink-haired girl whose yellow eyes were magnified to unsettling proportions by specialized goggles. She was actively vibrating with excitement as she stared at the Omnitrix. "Is this the interdimensional transformation device? The molecular reconfiguration apparatus? The alien DNA repository? The questions came rapid-fire without pausing for answers. "Hatsume," Power Loader sighed, "what have we discussed about personal space and project boundaries?" But sensei, the girl, Hatsume, protested without taking her magnified gaze from the Omnitrix. It's extraterrestrial technology with quantum entanglement properties. The applications for support item development are infinite. This must be the enthusiastic support student I was warned about, Ben commented with amusement. Mei Hatsume. She introduced herself, grabbing Ben's non-Omnitrix hand and shaking it vigorously. Support departments. Premier inventor and your new best friend. Hatsume is one of our most creative students, Power Loader explained with the tone of someone who had survived multiple laboratory explosions. Though her enthusiasm occasionally exceeds safety protocols. I prefer, innovatively interprets, safety protocols, Hatsume corrected cheerfully. May I scan your device with my babies? Babies? Ben asked, confused. Her inventions. Power Loader clarified. Hatsume refers to all her creations as her babies. Only the finest support items in UA history. Hatsume declared, producing several devices from the many pockets of her workshop apron. Non-invasive quantum state analyzers, molecular composition scanners, energy signature replicators, all my original designs. Hatsume, Keita interjected with quiet authority. The Omnitrix is classified technology. Any examination requires proper authorization and supervision. The support student deflated slightly before immediately rebounding. Of course, Mizuchi-san. I'll just observe the authorized examination then. Silently. From exactly this distance, she remained precisely where she was, hovering inches from Ben's wrist. Power Loader continued his analysis, occasionally murmuring technical observations to a recording device. Ben watched with interest as holographic representations of the Omnitrix's energy patterns were compared to baseline quirk signatures. The resonance is becoming more pronounced, Power Loader noted, as if the device is gradually calibrating itself to our dimension's fundamental energy field. Could explain why certain transformations feel different here, Ben suggested. When I used Big Chill earlier, the intangibility effect had a different texture, I guess. Like the local physics were slightly off. Fascinating. Power Loader muttered. Interdimensional adaptation at the quantum level. As they continued the examination, Ben gradually became aware of a subtle but persistent vibratio. N from the Omnitrix, different from its usual operational hum. The sensation increased until the hourglass symbol began pulsing with an irregular pattern he'd never seen before. Something's happening, Ben warned, pulling his wrist back instinctively. Power Loader's instruments immediately registered the change. Energy spike, harmonic resonance increasing exponentially. The Omnitrix projected its holographic interface without Ben's activation, alien silhouettes spinning past too rapidly to identify. Simultaneously, several support students' quirk-enhanced devices began malfunctioning, ends flickering and components humming at the same frequency as the Omnitrix. Dimensional flux. Hatsume exclaimed with inappropriate enthusiasm. Just like the theoretical models. Everyone back, Keita commanded, moving with practiced efficiency. Power Loader Sensei, containment protocols. The teacher activated emergency systems that created an energy barrier around their workstation. Ray, dings suggest some form of dimensional breach forming, localized but growing. Ben felt the familiar sensation of interdimensional energy. The same distinctive distortion he'd experienced when pursuing Eon through the portal. The Omnitrix wasn't just reacting to this world's energy, it was synchronizing with something specific, like a tuning fork finding its resonant frequency. The air above the workstation shimmered, reality distorting as if viewed through heat waves. A circular aberration formed, edges crackling with green-tinged energy that perfectly matched the Omnitrix's glow. Stabilizing breach, Power Loader announced, adjusting controls on his equipment. Containing the dimensional aperture, the portal's wild fluctuations slowed, its edges solidifying into a defined circle approximately 1 meter in diameter. Through the opening, Ben could see what appeared to be an alien landscape, red-tinged sky, crystalline formations, and unmistakably non-Earth vegetation. Petropia, Ben identified immediately. That's Diamond Head's homeworld. The Omnitrix is creating a dimensional window to the aliens' native planets. Power Loader's voice carried scientific awe despite the crisis management. Before anyone could respond, a crystalline object shot through the portal, narrowly missing Ben's head before embedding itself in the workstation. The dimensional window collapsed immediately afterward, reality snapping back into place with a thunderous crack that sent everyone staggering backward. Silence fell over the laboratory as support students stared wide-eyed at the smoking workstation. The Omnitrix's irregular pulsing gradually returned to its normal pattern. "Is everyone all right?" Power Loader called, doing a quick head count. Ben approached the workstation cautiously, examining the object that had emerged from the portal. It was a crystalline shard approximately 20 centimeters long, faceted like a massive diamond but with an internal structure that shifted and realigned constantly. A Petrosepian crystal, Ben identified, careful not to touch it directly. But altered somehow. Kata joined him, her expression intensely focused. "This confirms our theories," she said quietly. "The dimensional boundaries are thinning." "What theories?" Ben demanded, his patience for cryptic comments exhausted. "You've been hinting at knowing more about dimensional travel than you've shared." "Time for answers, Mizuchi-san." Power Loader interceded. "Perhaps this discussion should continue in a more secure location. Hatsume, containment unit for the crystal. Class, return to your projects. Full report on any affected equipment within the hour." With surprising efficiency, the support teacher organized the aftermath while Kata guided Ben toward the exit. Her typically composed demeanor showed subtle signs of strain, a tightness around her eyes, increased alertness in her posture. "The Quirk Regulation Bureau headquarters," she stated rather than suggested. "Director Tanaka needs to be briefed, and you deserve the complete picture." Finally, Ben muttered, "Lead the way." The Quirk Regulation Bureau's headquarters occupied an unassuming off-ice building in the government district of Musudafu. Its ordinary exterior belied the advanced security measures Ben observed as they passed through multiple checkpoints. Retinal scans, quirk signature verification, and what appeared to be psychic screening created layers of protection beyond anything he'd seen outside military installations. "Your organization takes security seriously," Ben commented as they entered an elevator that required Kata's handprint, voice recognition, and security code. "The Bureau manages Japan's most sensitive quirk-related matters," she replied as the elevator descended rather than ascending. "Including dimensional anomalies." The doors opened to reveal a facility that wouldn't have looked out of place in a plumber base. Advanced monitoring stations track ED data streams across multiple displays. Field agents in specialized gear moved purposefully between departments. An entire wall displayed a map of Japan with pulsing indicators in various colors. Ida led Ben directly to a conference room where a stern-looking man in his 50s awaited them. Despite his conventional suit, he carried himself with the unmistakable bearing of someone with combat experience. His most distinctive feature was a scar that traced from his right temple to the corner of his mouth. "Director Tanaka," Kata greeted formally. "The UA incident confirmed our theories. Dimensional bleed-through is accelerating." The man nodded once, his attention focusing fully on Ben. "Tennyson-san, I've reviewed your file extensively. Your arrival has catalyzed effects we've been monitoring for months." "My file?" Ben questioned, taking the seat Tanaka indicated. "That's the second time someone here has mentioned having information about me that shouldn't exist in this dimension." "Yet it does," Tanaka replied simply, activating a holographic display in the center of the conference table. "For approximately 9 months, our sensors have detected increasing dimensional anomalies throughout Japan. Initially minor, objects appearing with compositions that defied chemical analysis, electromagnetic disturbances with no identifiable source." The display showed recorded ink idents, a tree whose leaves had turned metallic overnight, a pond where water briefly flowed upward against gravity, electronic devices briefly displaying images from what appeared to be other worlds. 3 months ago, the anomalies intensified, Tanaka continued. Information began bleeding through, data packets containing fragments of what we now recognize as files from your dimension. Scientific records, historical accounts, and notably, he paused, meeting Ben's eyes directly, detailed files on an organization called the Plumbers, including extensive documentation on one Benjamin Kirby Tennyson and the Omnitrix. The revelation hit Ben with unexpected force. The idea that information about him, about his world, had been leaking into this dimension before his arrival was deeply unsettling. "The dimensional barrier between our worlds was already weakening," Kata explained, her professional demeanor softening slightly with what might have been sympathy. Your arrival didn't cause it. You're a symptom of a larger phenomenon. The Omnitrix's energy signature perfectly matches the dimensional disturbances we've been tracking, Tanaka added, displaying comparative wavelength patterns. It's as if it was drawn here specifically. Ben looked down at the device on his wrist with new understanding. It's not just adapting to this dimension, he realized. It's synchronizing whatever is causing the dimensional thinning. Precisely our conclusion, Tanaka confirmed. Which brings us to Agent Mizuchi's specialized role. Keita, she straightened slightly, her amber eyes meeting Ben's directly. I lead the Bureau's Dimensional Anomaly Response Team. My quirk allows me to sense energy patterns across dimensional boundaries, which is how I initially detected the information bleed-through. That explains a lot, Ben acknowledged. Including why you were assigned to me specifically. Your arrival represents the most significant dimensional event to date, Tanaka continued. And based on today's incident at UA, it appears the Omnitrix may be capable of temporarily stabilizing cross-dimensional portals. Which could potentially provide a way for you to return home, Keita added. But also presents significant risks if the portals become unpredictable or larger. Ben processed this information, years of dealing with universe-threatening crises allowing to adapt quickly to paradigm-shifting revelations. So what happened today? The portal to Petropia, that wasn't random. We believe the Omnitrix was responding to the ambient energy field created by UA's concentration of quirk users. Keita explained. Combined with Power Loader's scanning equipment, it created conditions that momentarily aligned dimensional frequencies. The crystal that came through, Ben continued. Following the logical progression, it's evidence that matter can transfer. But it was altered, changed by the dimensional passage. Tanaka nodded approvingly. You grasp the implications quickly. Yes, molecular reconfiguration during dimensional transfer appears inevitable with current conditions. Inanimate objects maintain structural integrity but undergo composition changes. What about living beings? Ben asked the crucial question. Keita and Tanaka exchanged glances. Unknown, she admitted. You're the first living entity to successfully traverse the dimensional boundary. And you did so with the Omnitrix, a device specifically designed to manipulate genetic structure. We hypothesize, Tanaka added carefully, that ordinary humans attempting dimensional travel under current conditions would experience severe molecular destabilization. In other words, Ben translated grimly, they'd die. Or worse, Keita acknowledged quietly. Which is why your presence is simultaneously our greatest concern and our greatest opportunity. The Omnitrix may be the key to understanding stable dimensional travel. Ben leaned back, processing the full implications. He wasn't just a random visitor, he was intimately connected to whatever phenomenon was affecting the boundaries between dimensions. The Omnitrix, which had always been a target for those seeking its power, now represented something potentially even more valuable, a gateway between worlds. Do you have theories about what's causing the dimensional thinning in the first place? Ben asked. Several, Tanaka replied, though none confirmed. The pattern of anomalies suggests a focal point. Somewhere in Japan, an event or entity is actively weakening the dimensional barrier. Our efforts to locate it have been unsuccessful thus far. Which is where you might assist us, Keita added. Your experience with interdimensional phenomena exceeds our own. And the Omnitrix clearly interacts with whatever force is causing this. Ben studied them both, weighing his options. Standard hero protocol in his dimension would involve contacting the plumbers immediately, but that wasn't possible here. His people, this organization, represented the closest equivalent to the interdimensional authority he was accustomed to working with. I'll help, he decided. But I need complete transparency moving forward. No more withholding information about my own situation. Agreed, Tanaka stated without hesitation. Agent Mizuchi will serve as your direct liaison, with full authorization to share all unclassified information regarding the dimensional anomalies. And classified information, Ben pressed. A hint of a smile touched the director's scarred face. Will be declassified as necessary, on my authority. Ben nodded, satisfied with the arrangement. So what's our next step? Continued monitoring of the Omnitrix's interactions with this dimension's energy field, Keita explained. Particularly during your training at UA, where quirk concentrations might trigger further resonance events. Meanwhile, Tanaka added, Our field teams will continue tracking anomalies, attempting to triangulate the source of the dimensional disturbance. And the crystal that came through? Ben asked. Already en route to our research division, Tanaka confirmed. Preliminary analysis suggests it contains trace energy patterns that might help identify specific dimensional frequencies. As the meeting concluded, Ben found himself with more questions than answers, but at least now he understood the framework of the situation. He wasn't simply a displaced hero, he was part of a larger dimensional mystery. Keita escorted him from the conference room, leading him through the facility toward the exit. The professional distance she'd maintained throughout their previous interactions had subtly shifted, not gone, but less rigid. I apologize for the information asymmetry thus far, she said as they reached the elevator. Protocol required confirmation of theories before full disclosure. I understand procedural caution, Ben replied. I've worked with enough organizations to recognize the pattern. Though I usually end up breaking the rules eventually. So your file indicates, Keita noted, the barest hint of amusement in her tone. The elevator ascended in comfortable silence. Until Ben voiced the question that had been forming since the meeting. Your quirk. Sensing dimensional energy. That's how you found me so quickly after I arrived, isn't it? Keita nodded. I detect your dimensional transition the moment you appeared. The energy signature was distinctive. Unlike anything I'd sensed before. And you've been sensing these anomalies for months, Ben continued. That must be exhausting. Constantly aware of reality fraying around you. Something in his observation seemed to surprise her, as if she hadn't expected empathy regarding her situation. It presents challenges, she acknowledged. Particularly as the incidents increase in frequency. The elevator reached the ground floor, doors opening to the building's unassuming lobby. I'll return you to UA, Keita said. Professional demeanor reasserting itself. Tomorrow's schedule includes homeroom, basic heroics with all might, and support item development theory. And early morning training with Kendo, Ben added. She invited me to join her practice session before classes. Keita's expression remained neutral, though Ben thought he detected something, curiosity, perhaps, in her amber eyes. Developing connections with your peers is advisable. Integration enhances observation opportunities. Is that the official line? Ben asked as they exited the building. Or do you actually think acting friends is a good idea for someone who might eventually have to leave this dimension? The question hung between them as they reached Keita's government vehicle, a sleek black sedan with subtle reinforcements Ben recognized as impact-resistant materials. Officially, she replied after a moment, social integration provides valuable data points regarding adaptation to interdimensional displacement. She opened the driver's door, then paused, meeting his eyes over the car's roof. Personally, I believe connections are what anchor us, regardless of which dimension we call home. The surprising philosophical response lingered in Ben's mind as they drove through Musudafu's evening streets toward Ua. The dimensional barriers might be thinning, but human connections remained a constant. Across worlds, something he'd discovered repeatedly throughout his hero career. As UA's impressive campus came into view, illuminated against the twilight sky, Ben found himself experiencing conflicting emotions. Concern about the dimensional anomalies warred with a growing comfort in this new world. The students he'd met, the challenges he'd faced, they were beginning to feel less alien despite their fundamental differences from his home dimension. We'll continue monitoring the Omnitrix, Keita said as they reached the dormitory entrance. Any unusual sensations or activation patterns should be reported immediately. You'll be the first call on my interdimensional hotline, Ben assured her with a half-smile. She didn't quite smile in return, but the professional mask softened slightly. Rest well, Tennyson-san. Tomorrow will undoubtedly present new challenges. As Ben watched her depart, the Omnitrix pulsed once with its new, subtly altered rhythm, a reminder that everything had changed. He was not merely a visitor in this dimension but potentially a key to understanding the growing crisis. Turning toward the dormitory, he spotted a familiar pink figure waiting by the entrance. Ashido waved enthusiastically when she saw him, bouncing slightly on her toes with characteristic energy. Alien boy, there you are. We were wondering where you disappeared to after training. She jogged over, golden eyes bright with curiosity. Secret government debriefing. Alien communication sessions. Interdimensional conspiracy. Despite the weight of his recent revelations, Ben found himself smiling. Something like that. Let's just say my government babysitter had some interesting information to share. Ooh, mysterious, Ashido teased, falling into step beside him as they entered the building. Well, while you were off with the men in black, Kendo couldn't stop talking about your rescue techniques. I think she's impressed, and trust me, that's not easy. She seems like someone who values competence. Ben observed as they reached the common area where several 1A students were gathered. Mina, Ben, just in time, Hiroshima called from a couch surrounded by Kaminari, Shiro, and Midoriya. We're planning a welcome party for tomorrow night. Nothing fancy, just snacks and games in the common room. A party, for me? Ben asked, genuinely surprised by the gesture. Of course, Ashido exclaimed, grabbing his arm excitedly. Interdimensional hero joins our class. That's totally party-worthy. Looking at their enthusiastic faces, Ben felt an unexpected warmth spreading through him. Despite the complications, the regulations, and the dimensional crisis looming in the background, these students had simply decided to welcome him as one of their own. That sounds great, he said sincerely. Though fair warning, I have alien transformation powers, not party planning skills. Leave that to the party planning committee, Ashido declared, pointing to herself with both thumbs again. Just bring yourself and maybe show off a cool alien or two. As the evening continued with casual conversation and planning, Ben found himself gradually relaxing into this new dynamic. The dimensional mysteries would still be there tomorrow, but for now, perhaps adaptation meant more than just understanding this world's hero protocols. It meant allowing himself to form connections despite the uncertain future. Later, as he prepared for bed in his dormitory room, the Omnitrix pulsed once more with its altered rhythm. Ben studied it thoughtfully, wondering what other surprise this dimensional displacement would bring. One thing was certain, whatever challenges emerged, he wouldn't be facing them alone. Well, Omnitrix, he murmured as he set his alarm for Kendo's early training session. Looks like we're going native. At least until we figure out what's really happening between dimensions. The device offered no response beyond its steady green glow, a familiar constant in an increasingly unfamiliar world. Chapter 2 and Chapter 3, Technical Support. Morning sunlight filtered through the windows of Gym Gamma as Ben arrived for the early training session. The cavern house facility was largely empty at this hour, with only a handful of dedicated students taking advantage of the pre-class time for independent practice. Among them, Itsuka Kendo moved through a series of precise kata. Her form displaying the disciplined grace of years of martial arts training. Ben paused at the entrance, taking a moment to observe. Kendo's movements were fluid yet powerful, each transition executed with perfect balance and control. Unlike the flashy quirk demonstrations that dominated formal training, this was pure technique, the foundation that supported her hero work. You going to stand there all morning? Tennyson, Kendo called without breaking her form, apparently having sensed his presence despite her focus. Just appreciating good technique, Ben replied, entering the gym. Traditional karate, Kenpo, primarily, she corrected, completing her sequence before turning to face him fully. She wore a simple white gi with an orange belt, her usual side ponytail replaced by a practical bun. With elements of judo and aikido. You have martial arts experience. Ben nodded, dropping his gym bag by the wall. Nothing formal or consistent. Picked up techniques from different teachers over the years. Plumber combat training, a few alien martial arts, lessons from my cousin who's a black belt. Alien martial arts. Kendo's eyebrows rose with interest. That must be unique. Four-armed Tetraman techniques definitely require some anatomical adjustments, Ben agreed with a slight smile. But the principles translate surprisingly well. Balance, leverage, momentum, physics works similarly across species. Kendo gestured toward the open floor. Show me. The direct challenge carried no hostility, only professional curiosity. Ben recognized it as both an evaluation and an invitation to exchange knowledge, a universal language among martial artists. Basic stance or something more interesting? He asked, removing his jacket and shoes. Whatever you're comfortable demonstrating without transformation, she replied, moving to create space. Ben centered himself, then flowed into a sequence that combined elements of several combat styles he'd learned over the years. The movements weren't as polished as Kendo's traditional forms, but they carried the unmistakable efficiency of techniques tested in actual combat. Kendo observed with analytical attention, her eyes tracking each transition and technique. When Ben finished, she nodded appreciatively. Practical application over form, she noted. Your training prioritizes combat effectiveness rather than traditional perfection. When alien warlords are trying to kill you, style points don't count for much, Ben confirmed. Yet there's discipline in your movement, she continued, circling him with professional assessment. Particularly in your weight distribution and recovery positioning. Defensive priority. Good catch, Ben acknowledged, impressed by her observation. The Omnitrix times out unexpectedly sometimes. Learned early to always maintain positions I could defend from as a human if necessary. Something like respect flickered in Kendo's expression. Adaptability is survival strategy. Practical. She moved to stand opposite him on the training mat. Sparring partner, she offered. Light contact, technique focus. Ben recognized the professional opportunity this represented. Kendo wasn't just another student. Her disciplined approach and leadership position in Class 1B marked her as someone who took heroics seriously beyond the flashy aspects that dominated public perception. I'd appreciate that, he agreed, taking a ready stance. They began circling each other, each watching for openings and tells. Kendo moved with practiced precision, her guard economical and effective. Ben maintained a more adaptive stance, integrating elements from multiple styles. The first exchange came quickly, Kendo testing with a swift combination that Ben deflected rather than blocked. Responding with a controlled counter that she easily evaded. Neither pressed for advantage, instead using the initial contact to gauge each other's timing and reflexes. You telegraph slightly before committing, Kendo noted as they reset. 1/10 of a second hesitation. And you favor your right side for power strikes, despite being primarily left-handed, Ben countered, having noticed the subtle preference. Kendo's eyes widened fractionally, surprised he'd identified her handedness so quickly. Observant. The sparring continued with increasing tempo, each exchange more complex than the last. What began as technical assessment evolved into a fluid conversation of movement. Ben recognized techniques from various Japanese martial arts in Kendo's approach, while she adapted quickly to his less orthodox style. After 10 minutes of continuous exchange, they separated by mutual agreement, both breathing harder but neither having gained decisive advantage. Your combat experience shows, Kendo acknowledged, using a small towel to dab perspiration from her forehead. Your technique may be unorthodox, but your practical applications are sound. Your foundation is impressive. Ben returned the professional respect. Most quirk users rely so heavily on their powers that their base techniques suffer. A mistake, she replied firmly. Quirks are extensions of ourselves, not replacements for fundamental skills. The philosophical statement revealed more about Kendo's approach to heroism than their entire sparring session had. Ben found himself appreciating her perspective. It aligned with his own experiences of needing to function effectively even without the Omnitrix. I noticed the same thing yesterday during rescue training, Ben commented. Some students went immediately to quirk solutions when basic techniques would have been more efficient. A common problem in hero education, Kendo agreed, retrieving a water bottle from her bag. Students focus on developing flashy quirk applications rather than fundamental rescue protocols. As they continued discussing training philosophies, other students began arriving for early practice. Ben noticed Ojiro from Class 1A working through tail-integrated martial arts forms, while Tetsu from 1B was conditioning his steel body against increasingly heavy impacts. They're dedicated, Ben observed, gesturing toward the scattered students. Top hero programs demand nothing less, Kendo replied. UA's acceptance rate is less than 2% of applicants. Everyone here fought hard for their place. The statement carried an unspoken question about Ben's own presence, his provisional admission circumventing the rigorous process others had endured. Rather than defensiveness, he opted for honesty. I understand I'm an anomaly here, he acknowledged. Getting special treatment because of circumstances rather than earning my place through your entrance exams. Kendo studied him thoughtfully. Yesterday's rescue operation demonstrated capability beyond most first-year students. Your experience is evident. Different path, perhaps, but not unearned. The simple validation, coming from S. One clearly respected by peers across both hero classes, carried unexpected weight. Before Ben could respond, the gym doors opened to admit a familiar pink-skinned figure practically bouncing with morning energy. Morning Training Club, Ashido called cheerfully, spotting Ben and Kendo. She wore workout clothes in vibrant colors that somehow complemented her unusual complexion. Alien boy, I didn't know you were an early riser. Kendo invited me, Ben explained as Ashido bounded over. Comparing combat techniques. Ooh, martial arts showdown. Ashido's golden eyes sparkled with interest. Who won? It wasn't competitive, Kendo clarified, though her lips curved slightly at Ashido's enthusiasm. Knowledge exchange. Sure, Ashido winked conspiratorially at Ben. Very diplomatic of you not to mention totally dominating our class representative. Actually, Kendo identified 3 critical weaknesses in my guard, Ben corrected honestly. If we'd been going full contact, I'd have been in trouble. Ashido's expression shifted to genuine surprise, both at Ben's candid admission and the implied skill level of Kendo. Seriously, but you've been fighting bad guys for years. XP. Ryan's isn't the same as formal training, Kendo explained, her tone taking on a slightly instructional quality that suggested her leadership role. Tennyson-san has practical combat knowledge, but Hai's technique has gaps that a disciplined opponent could exploit. Which is why sharing knowledge benefits everyone, Ben added. I learn refined technique, Kendo gets perspective on unconventional opponents. So practical, Ashido commented, stretching her arms above her head. And here I just came to practice my acid veil mobility. She demonstrated by secreting a small amount of acid from her palms. The liquid shimmering with controlled viscosity. Been working on reducing friction coefficients for faster slides while increasing adhesion for vertical surfaces. Ben's interest was genuinely piqued. Controlled chemical property manipulation. That's impressive molecular control. Ashido beamed at the recognition of her technical skill, something often overlooked beneath her bubbly personality. Thanks. Took forever to figure out the right mental triggers for different compositions. Most people think I just make random acid, but there's actually complex chemistry involved. Your Yerk has some of the highest adaptation potential in our year, Kendo acknowledged, surprising both Ben and Ashido with the forthright assessment. The ability to modify chemical properties on demand offers tremendous tactical flexibility. Quote, Ashido stared at Kendo for a moment before a wide grin spread across her face. Class 1B's representative just complimented my quirk. This day is already awesome. Kendo's expression softened slightly at Ashido's unfiltered enthusiasm. Credit where it's due, Ashido-san. Your performance during yesterday's rescue exercise showed significant technical improvement from previous joint training. The 3 continued conversing as they moved through their respective training routines. Ben was struck by the contrasting yet complementary personalities, Kendo's disciple. In professionalism and Ashido's ebullient creativity creating a dynamic he found unexpectedly engaging. Both young women were clearly dedicated to heroics despite their different approaches. After demonstrating an acid-assisted mobility technique that allowed her to slide up vertical surfaces, Ashido paused to watch Ben and Kendo exchange countering techniques. You know, she commented thoughtfully, your fighting styles actually complement each other really well. Kendo's all precise and technically perfect, while Ben's adaptive and unpredictable. You'd make good patrol partners. Someth. In her tone carried a subtle undercurrent Ben couldn't quite identify. Not jealousy, exactly, but perhaps assessment of the rapport developing between himself and Kendo. Different methodologies often create effective team dynamics. Kendo agreed professionally, provided there's mutual respect for the strengths each approach offers. The conversation was interrupted by Ben's watch alarm, not the Omnitrix, but a standard digital timepiece Aizawa had provided for scheduling purposes. Homeroom in 30 minutes, Ben noted, checking the display. Race you to the showers, Ashido declared with childlike spontaneity. Already gathering her things. Kendo shook her head with tolerant amusement. Not everything is a competition, Ashido-san. Says someone who's clearly never experienced the joy of winning a shower race. Ashido retorted with a wink before jogging toward the exit. See you in class, alien boy. Kendo, same time tomorrow. After she departed in a whirlwind of energy, NDO turned to Ben with a slightly bemused expression. Ashido-san's enthusiasm is remarkable. It's genuine, though, Ben observed, having recognized the quality from their interactions. Some pay. Opal put on that kind of energy as a facade, but with her, it's just who she is. Perceptive, Kendo noted, gathering her own training gear with methodical efficiency. Most people see only the surface with Ashido-san. Her strategic intelligence is often underestimated. Ben recalled how quickly Ashido had adapted during the previous day's rescue exercise, her seemingly impulsive personality belying quick tactical thinking. There's more to most people than their obvious traits. Indeed, Kendo agreed, slinging her bag over her shoulder. She hesitated briefly before adding, the morning training group meets daily at 5:30. You're welcome to join regularly, if your dimensional visitor schedule permits. The invitation, delivered with professional courtesy that nonetheless suggested growing collegiality, brought an appreciative smile to Ben's face. I'd like that, assuming no interdimensional crises intervene. Of course, Kendo replied with the barest hint of a smile. Interdimensional crises take priority. Morning classes passed in a blur of academic content that Ben found simultaneously familiar and disorienting. The subjects themselves, mathematics, literature, history, load recognizable educational structures, but the cultural context and historical references highlighted his dimensional displacement. Japan's hero society had evolved differently from his Earth's geopolitical structures, creating a subtly altered historical timeline that occasionally left him struggling to follow classroom discussions. During modern history, Present Mike referenced pre-Quirk Seattle structures, and the exceptional generation, with the assumption of common knowledge that Ben lacked. Midoriya, noticing his confusion, quietly shared supplementary notes, meticulously organized. Information that helped bridge the contextual gaps. Thanks, Ben whispered as Present Mike turned to write key points on the board. Still getting used to your world's historical timeline. Your mention doesn't have the quirk emergence era. Midoriya whispered back, his inherent curiosity momentarily overriding classroom protocol. No quirks at all, Ben confirmed quietly. Superpowers came from technology, alien heritage, or magical artifacts, not genetic mutations across the general population. Midoriya's eyes widened with scholarly fascination. He scribbled a note that read, Comparative Dimensional Development Theories. Discuss later. The exchange was interrupted by Present Mike's theatrical voice projection. Yo, Midoriya, Tennyson, something you'd like to share with the class about the International Hero Accords. Quote, sorry, Sensei. Midoriya apologized immediately, his face flushing. Just getting some historical context, Ben added smoothly. Dimensional differences in timeline development. Present Mike's exuberant persona shifted instantly to scholarly interest. Oh, perhaps you could enlighten us on how hero regulations developed in your dimension, yeah. Put on the spot, Ben found 20 pairs of curious eyes suddenly fixed on him. Even Bakugo, who had been maintaining deliberate disinterest in Ben's presence, glanced over with begrudging curiosity. Well, Ben began, organizing his thoughts. Without quirks, there was never a systematic regulation of powers. Heroes emerged individually, some with public identities, others anonymous. Organizations formed for those who wanted structure. But independent operation remained common. No licensing requirement, Iida asked, hand raised rigidly despite already speaking. Nothing formalized, Ben confirmed. Though some government agencies tried implementing registration programs. Those didn't go well. Meaning, Present Mike prompted. Civil conflict, Ben explained carefully. Requiring people with powers to register with authorities created division among heroes. Some saw it as necessary oversight, others as dangerous control. The classroom fell silent as students processed this alternative historical development. Ben noted several thoughtful expressions, particularly Todoroki, whose heterochromatic eyes held an intensity that suggested personal connection to the concept of power regulation. Fascinating comparative development, Present Mike declared, seamlessly integrating the tangent into his lesson. Which brings us back to our own International Hero Accords, the first global standardization of hero licensing requirements. As the lecture continued, Ben caught Ashido giving him an encouraging thumbs up from her seat. The simple gesture of support brought a small smile to his face. a reminder that despite the disorientation of dimensional displacement, connections were forming that made this world increasingly less alien. When lunch period arrived, Ben found himself surrounded by curious classmates as they made their way to the cafeteria. Hiroshima and Kaminari peppered him with questions about Dimension hero battles, while Uraraka and Asui wondered about cultural differences between worlds. Do heroes in your dimension have popularity rankings? Uraraka asked as they collected their food trays. Not officially, Ben replied. Though media coverage definitely created unofficial hierarchies. My team got reasonable press, but nothing like the corporate-sponsored heroes. Your team. Midoriya latched onto this new information. You operated as part of a hero collective. Mostly worked with my cousin Gwen and our friend Kevin, Ben explained as they found a table. Gwen has magical abilities and a genius-level intellect. Kevin can absorb and manipulate materials. We've been a team since we were teenagers. Like early sidekicks becoming independent heroes, Asui observed thoughtfully, her large eyes blinking. Many pro-heroes follow similar development paths, hero. As lunch continued, Ben found himself increasingly comfortable discussing his home dimension. The students' genuine interest created a space where memories of home strengthened, rather than pained him, transforming homesickness into shared experience. Their meal was interrupted when Aizawa appeared beside their table, his perpetually exhausted expression unchanged. Tennyson, your presence is required in Development Studio B immediately after lunch. Principal Nezu's directive. Something wrong? Ben asked, immediately alert. Not wrong. Scheduled, Aizawa corrected. Quote, the I-Island research delegation has arrived earlier than expected. Power Loader requested immediate commencement of the Omnitrix analysis project. I-Island. Midoriya's eyes widened. The Shield Foundation is here at UA. Aizawa's flat gaze shifted to the green-haired student. This information is not for general distribution, Midoriya. Of course not, Sensei. Midoriya assured quickly, though. His expression radiated barely contained excitement. Finish your lunch, then report directly to Development Studio B, Aizawa instructed Ben before departing with his characteristic economical movement. The moment Aizawa was out of earshot, Midoriya leaned forward, practically vibrating with enthusiasm. I-Island scientists are coming to study the Omnitrix. The Shield Foundation specializes in support item development and quirk enhancement technology. They're the most advanced research facility in the world. Shield Foundation? Ben questioned. Related to Captain America, the reference earned him blank stares before Ashido burst into giggles. Different universe, remember. No Marvel here. The Shield Foundation was established by David Shield, former support designer for All Might and the world's leading quirk technology researcher, Midoriya explained, slipping effortlessly into his encyclopedic knowledge mode. I-Island is a mobile research city, completely artificial is. Land housing thousands of scientists working on hero support technology. Moving research facility. Ben's interest was genuinely piqued. That's actually pretty similar to the Plumbers, deep space research stations. Will you tell us about it afterward? Ashido asked, leaning forward with undisguised curiosity. The super-secret Omnitrix study session. If I'm allowed, Ben hedged, uncertain of the confidentiality protocols surrounding his situation. Mizuchi-san might have opinions about information sharing. Your government handler is scary intense, Kaminari commented. Always watch him from corners like some kind of quirk regulation ninja. Speaking of whom, Uraraka whispered, nodding subtly toward the cafeteria entrance where Keita had appeared, scanning the room with characteristic alertness. Her amber eyes located Ben immediately, and she made her way toward their table with efficient purpose. Today she wore a tailored charcoal suit that somehow managed to look both professionally appropriate and combat-ready. Tennyson-san, she greeted formally. The I-Island delegation is prepared. Your presence is requested. Lunch just ended anyway, Ben replied, gathering his tray. He turned to his classmates. Save me some party planning details for later. Count on it, Ashido assured with a bright smile. And we want all the non-classified details about the fancy science meeting. As Ben followed Keita from the cafeteria, he noted a subtle tension in her normally fluid movements. Something's different, he observed quietly once they were in the corridor. You're concerned. Keita glanced at him appraising Ly, perhaps reassessing his perceptiveness. The dimensional anomalies increased by 17% overnight, she confirmed in a low voice. 3. Separate incidents across Musudafu, objects appearing, electromagnetic disturbances, and a brief gravitational inversion in a residential area. Any pattern to the locations? Ben asked, immediately focused on the tactical implications. Analysis is ongoing, she replied. Director Tanaka has authorized sharing findings with the SHIELD Foundation researchers under restricted protocols. Their expertise in energy manipulation technology may prove valuable. They reached Development Studio B, a more specialized and secure facility than the main support department workshop Ben had visited previously. Unlike the chaotic creative environment where students developed their babies, this laboratory featured precision equipment, holographic interfaces, and significantly enhanced security measures. Power Loader awaited them at the entrance, accompanied by 2 individuals Ben hadn't met before. The first was a tall, distinguished-looking man with blonde hair and glasses, dressed in a white lab coat over business attire. Beside him stood a young woman approximately Ben's age, with long blonde hair and bright blue eyes that immediately locked onto the Omnitrix with undisguised scientific fascination. Tennyson-san, Power Loader greeted. Allow me to introduce Professor David Shield and his daughter, Melissa Shield, from the I-Island Research Foundation. A pleasure to meet you, Pr. Professor Shield extended his hand with a warm smile. Your dimensional transition has created quite a stir in the scientific community. Few theoretical physicists ever expected to meet an actual interdimensional traveler. Ben shook the offered hand, noting the scientist's firm grip and genuine enthusiasm. Glad to meet you too, though the dimensional transition wasn't exactly planned on my end. The unplanned discoveries are often the most significant, Shield replied with the easy confidence of a lifetime researcher. The Quirk Regulation Bureau has shared their preliminary findings regarding your arrival and the associated dimensional phenomena. Fascinating energy signatures, unlike anything in our current scientific literature. Dad tends to get excited about new research, Melissa interjected with a fond smile. Stepping forward to introduce herself. Melissa Shield. I specialize in miniaturized support systems and energy transmission technology. Ben shook her hand, noting her professional demeanor and the unmistakable intelligence in her eyes. Ben Tennyson. I specialize in turning into aliens and figuring things out as I go. Melissa laughed. A genuine, warm sound. Honest approach. I appreciate that. Most visitors to our labs try to sound more scientific than they actually are. No point pretending, Ben replied with a slight shrug. The Omnitrix is way beyond my technical understanding. I know how to use it, not how it works. Which is precisely why collaborative analysis is so valuable, Professor Shield noted, gesturing toward the laboratory's Centra L platform where specialized equipment had been arranged. With your permission, we'd like to begin a comprehensive energy signature analysis of the Omnitrix and its interaction with our dimension's ambient quark field. The technical terminology reminded Ben of conversations with his cousin Gwen, who similarly bridged the gap between mystical power and scientific understanding. As long as there's no poking, prodding, or attempts to remove it, Ben agreed, having established firm boundaries during previous examinations. Absolutely not, Melissa assured him. Non-invasive scanning only. The Omnitrix appears symbiotically bonded to your genetic structure. Attempting separation would be both dangerous and unethical. Ben blinked, impressed by her immediate understanding of the device's connection to its wearer, something many scientists in his own dimension had failed to grasp. You picked that up fast. The energy synchronization pattern between your biological signature and the device is distinctive, she explained, leading him toward a scanning platform, similar to certain advanced prosthetics, but with bidirectional genetic integration beyond our current technology. As they reached the central laboratory area, Ben noticed multiple holographic displays showing what appeared to be the dimensional anomaly data Kata had mentioned. Swirling energy patterns, geographical mapping, and mathematical formulas created a comprehensive visualization of the phenomenon affecting Musudafu. Professor Shield followed Ben's gaze. The Bureau has shared their monitoring data with us. The correlation between your arrival and the increasing anomalies is unmistakable, though the causal relationship remains unclear. Am I making it worse by being here? Ben asked directly, voicing The concern that had been growing since learning about the dimensional thinning. Not necessarily, Melissa answered thoughtfully. Our preliminary analysis suggests the Omnitrix is responding to THE-dimensional disturbances rather than causing them. The energy signatures indicate a pre-existing weakening in dimensional barriers that your device is synchronizing with, possibly as a natural adaptive function. Her clear explanation, delivered without condescension despite the complex subject matter, reminded Ben again of Gwen. The comparison brought both comfort and a renewed pang of homesickness. The synchronization might actually be beneficial, Professor Shield added, adjusting settings on a scanning device. If we can understand how the Omnitrix navigates dimensional boundaries, we might develop methods to stabilize the anomalies, perhaps even create controlled transit between dimensions. Which could get me home, Ben concluded. Potentially, Shield acknowledged cautiously. Though interdimensional physics remains largely theoretical, we're in uncharted scientific territory. For the next hour, Ben cooperated with increasingly sophisticated scans of the Omnitrix. Unlike previous examinations that had focused primarily on its transformation capabilities, the Shield Foundation approach emphasized dimensional energy interactions. Melissa proved particularly adept at calibrating equipment to capture the subtle oscillations in the device's quantum signature. The harmonic frequency is fascinating, she commented, studying a three-dimensional energy model floating between them. It's almost like the Omnitrix is trying to establish dimensional resonance, seeking a specific frequency. Could it be attempting to reconnect with its home dimension? Kada suggested, speaking for the first time since introductions. She had positioned herself at a monitoring station, dividing attention between the laboratory activities and her bureau communications device. Possible, Melissa acknowledged, or it might be responding to whatever is causing the dimensional thinning in the first place. The patterns suggest a form of quantum entanglement, as if the device recognizes a specific energy signature. Ben studied the holographic representation of the Omnitrix's energy field, swirling patterns of green and blue light interacting with the ambient background energy of this dimension. It reminds me of how the Omnitrix responds to uncatalogued alien DNA, seeking to synchronize and incorporate new patterns. Melissa's eyes lit with scientific excitement. That's it. It's treating this dimension's energy field as new information to be cataloged. The device must have adaptive protocols for unknown environments. Meaning, Kada prompted, her professional demeanor not quite concealing genuine interest. The Omnitrix isn't just a transformation device, Melissa explained, her hands moving animatedly as she developed the theory. It's a sophisticated adaptive system designed to interact with diverse bioenergetic environments. When it encountered our dimension's quirk energy field, something fundamentally different from its original universe, it began a calibration process. Like updating its software for a new operating system, Ben suggested, following her logic. Precisely, Melissa confirmed with an appreciative smile. But if that's the case, the calibration process might eventually stabilize. The increasing anomalies could be temporary side effects of dimensional adaptation. Professor Shield, who had been running additional analyses during their conversation, looked up with a more cautious expression. Or the calibration might be accelerating the dimensional thinning by creating resonance pathways between universes. Without understanding the original cause, we can't be certain if the Omnitrix is mitigating or exacerbating the phenomenon. The sobering assessment brought a momentary silence to the laboratory. Ben felt the familiar weight of universal consequences settling on his shoulders, a burden he'd carried since finding the Omnitrix at 10 years old. Once again, his presence alone might be endangering an entire world. We need more data, Melissa declared, breaking the tension with practical determination, particularly regarding how the Omnitrix interacts with active quirks in the vicinity. The energy transfer pattern might reveal whether the resonance is constructive or destructive to dimensional stability. Training exercises, Kada suggested immediately. Controlled environments where Tennyson sand transform while in proximity to diverse quirk types. Exactly what I was thinking, Melissa agreed, the two women finding immediate common ground in problem solving despite their different backgrounds. With appropriate monitoring equipment, we could map the interaction patterns precisely. I can arrange a specialized training session, Power Loader offered. Select students with representative quirk categories, emitter, transformation, mutant types, to provide diverse energy signatures. As the technical discussion continued, Ben found himself watching Melissa with growing appreciation. Despite her young age, she navigated complex theoretical concepts with confidence born of genuine expertise rather than ego. Her enthusiasm for problem-solving matched her scientific knowledge, a combination Ben had always respected in his cousin and other plumber scientists. We should also monitor transformation sequences in different geographical locations, Melissa continued, pulling up a map of Musudafu with anomaly indicators. If the dimensional thinning has focal points, the Omnitrix's response might vary based on proximity to these areas. The Bureau has identified 3 primary hotspots, Keita confirmed, transferring data from her device to the main display: Residential District East, Industrial Zone North, and the Harbor area. I'll design portable monitoring equipment, Melissa decided, already sketching concepts on a digital pad. Something unobtrusive that can capture the energy fluctuations during transformation sequences. Like specialized support gear, Ben suggested. Melissa's eyes brightened. Exactly. A support item designed specifically for interdimensional energy monitoring. I can integrate it with standard UA training equipment to avoid drawing attention. As the planning continued, Ben was struck by how quickly this team of dimensional strangers had coalesced around his situation. The collaborative problem-solving reminded him of plumber crisis response. Experts from diverse backgrounds finding common purpose in addressing extraordinary threats. The laboratory session eventually concluded with a comprehensive research plan. Ben would participate in specialized training exercises while wearing Melissa's monitoring equipment, gathering data on the Omnitrix's interactions with this dimension's energy field. Simultaneously, Bureau teams would continue tracking anomalies, seeking patterns that might reveal the underlying cause of the dimensional thinning. We'll have the initial monitoring gear ready by tomorrow morning, Professor Shield announced as they wrapped up. Melissa will oversee the calibration to ensure optimal data collection, which means I'll need to work closely with you during the training sessions, Melissa explained to Ben. The equipment will require real-time adjustments based on transformation energy fluctuations. I'll coordinate with Aizawa-sensei to modify your training schedule, Power Loader added. We'll need to balance research requirements with your continued hero education. As the meeting dispersed, Ben found himself walking alongside Melissa toward the exit. Keita had stepped aside to take a communication from the Bureau, giving them a moment of relative privacy. I appreciate the help, Ben said sincerely. Dimensional displacement wasn't exactly on my career plan. Melissa smiled, her blue eyes reflecting genuine empathy. I understand being thrust into unexpected situations. Growing up on an island, surrounded by the world's leading quirk scientists, created its own kind of displacement. You don't have a quirk? Ben asked, having noticed she hadn't mentioned any personal abilities during their technical discussions. Quirkless, she confirmed without self-consciousness. In a family of brilliant support engineers. No less. My father is David Shield, All Might's legendary support designer, big shoes to fill without a quirk. The matter-of-fact acknowledgement of her situation, delivered without self-pity or defensiveness, struck Ben as remarkably mature. From what I saw today, you're filling those shoes just fine. Most scientists I've met take days to develop theories you worked out in minutes. A slight blush colored her cheeks at the straightforward compliment. Thanks. I've been around quirk science my entire life, but interdimensional physics is new territory for everyone. Your situation is genuinely unprecedented. Story of my life, Ben replied with a rueful smile. Finding the Omnitrix at 10 basically guaranteed, unprecedented, would become my normal. 10. Melissa's eyebrows rose. You've been handling this responsibility since childhood. The question carried understanding rather than disbelief, recognition of the weight such power would place on young shoulders. Before Ben could respond, Keita rejoined them, her expression more serious than usual. Another anomaly, she reported quietly. Harbor District, temporal distortion affecting a 3-block radius. Bureau response teams are containing the situation. Temporal. Ben's attention sharpened immediately. Like time manipulation, Keita nodded once. Accelerated time flow within the affected area. Approximately 3.7 times normal rate, based on preliminary readings. That matches the energy signature we detected during the Omnitrix resonance spike, Melissa noted with concern. The dimensional thinning may be affecting temporal stability as well as spatial boundaries. The implications were troubling. Ben had experienced time manipulation previously, particularly during confrontations with Eon, the time-traveling villain he'd been pursuing when displaced to this dimension. The connection seemed unlikely to be coincidental. I should investigate, Ben decided. If there's a temporal component to these anomalies, it might relate to how I got here in the first place. Bureau protocols require. Kata began. Observer accompaniment during quirk-related investigation, Ben finished. Having memorized the basic regulations. I'm not suggesting going alone. Kata studied him for a moment before nodding. I'll arrange transportation. The anomaly perimeter is already secured, but on-site assessment may provide valuable data. I'm coming too, Melissa stated with quiet determination. If the temporal distortion relates to the Omnitrix's dimensional resonance, direct observation is essential for accurate analysis. The decisiveness in her tone suggested she was accustomed to asserting her expertise despite her youth, another quality that reminded Ben of Gwen. Kata seemed to recognize the scientific necessity as well, offering no objection to Melissa's inclusion. We depart in 15 minutes, Kata confirmed. Southern Vehicle Bay. As she stepped away to coordinate with Bureau teams, Melissa turned to Ben with a mix of scientific excitement and appropriate caution. Temporal anomalies are extremely rare, even among quirk manifestations. If this is connected to your arrival, then we might be getting closer to understanding how I got here, Ben completed her thought. And possibly how I get back. Exactly, she confirmed. Though temporal manipulation carries significant risks. If the distortion is expanding. Been there, done that, Ben assured her with the confidence of experience. Fought a time-traveling alien warlord more times than I can count. Temporal paradoxes are Tuesday afternoons in my line of work. Melissa laughed despite the serious situation. You say that so casually. Interdimensional time-traveling alien battles is routine experience. After 7 years with the Omnitrix, your definition of normal gets pretty flexible, Ben replied with a smile, finding her blend of scientific focus and genuine warmth increasingly engaging. The Harbor District anomaly proved both more and less concerning than anticipated. Upon arrival, Ben found Bureau agents maintaining a perimeter around an iridescent dome. Of energy approximately 30 meters in diameter. Within the distortion, objects moved at accelerated speed, birds flying in fast forward, water droplets from a broken pipe forming rapid sequence patterns in the air. Contained for now, Kata explained as they observed from a monitoring station. But the effect is gradually expanding. Rate of approximately 3 centimeters per hour. Energy signature, Melissa asked, immediately focusing on the monitoring equipment. Consistent with previous anomalies, but with an added temporal component, a Bureau technician replied, displaying comparative readings. The wavelength modulation suggests interdimensional energy bleeding through with Cronin particle acceleration. Ben studied the phenomenon with practiced assessment. I've seen similar effects when Eon, the time-traveling alien I was pursuing, manipulates temporal boundaries. This looks like a side effect rather than a controlled manifestation. Meaning, Kata prompted. It's more like temporal bleed-through than directed manipulation, Ben explained. As if time itself is flowing differently between dimensions, and the thinning barriers are allowing that differential to affect local space-time. Melissa looked impressed by his analysis. That aligns with theoretical models of interdimensional physics. Different universes potentially having different fundamental constants, including temporal flow rates. Can you stabilize it? Kata asked directly. Ben considered the Omnitrix, which had remained unusually quiet during their approach to the anomaly. I have a transformation clockwork with temporal manipulation abilities. Might be able to synchronize the time flows, but without understanding the underlying cause. It could exacerbate the situation, Melissa finished his thought. Creating resonance that expands the effect rather than containing it. Exactly, Ben confirmed, appreciating her quick grasp of the risks. Better to gather data first, und understand the pattern before attempting intervention. For the next hour, they methodically documented the anomaly's properties. Melissa proved remarkably adept at recalibrating equipment to capture temporal fluctuations, while Ben provided insights based on his previous experiences with time manipulation. Keita coordinated with Bureau teams to maintain the security perimeter, occasionally joining their technical discussions with surprisingly informed questions. The wavelength pattern is stabilizing, Melissa eventually noted, studying the latest readings. The expansion has slowed to less than a centimeter per hour. Self-limiting, Keita questioned. More likely reaching equilibrium, Melissa replied. Like pressure differentials balancing between connected systems. If this is dimensional bleed through, there may be a natural limit to how far the effect can extend from the focal point. Ben watched as maintenance crews used specialized equipment to provide essentials to civilians trapped within the affected area, food and medical supplies delivered via temporal compensation devices that adjusted for the accelerated time flow. The Bureau's preparedness for such unusual phenomena was impressive. Your world handles these situations remarkably well, he observed to Keita. Most dimensions of visited would be in full panic mode over temporal anomalies. Japan's Quirk Reg. Elation Bureau was established precisely for unusual manifestations, she explained. After the exceptional generation produced quirks that altered fundamental physical laws, protocols were developed for containing reality-affecting incidents. Still, Ben persisted, the coordination between agencies, the specialized equipment, this level of preparation suggests experience with similar phenomena. Something flickered across Keita's expression, a momentary hesitation that confirmed Ben's suspicion that the Bureau knew more about dimensional anomalies than they had fully disclosed. Before he could press further, Melissa called their attention to her monitoring device. The Omnitrix is responding to the anomaly. Subtle energy fluctuations synchronizing with the temporal field. Ben felt chi now, a barely perceptible vibration from the device, different from its normal operational hum. It's scanning the effect, trying to categorize it somehow. May I? Melissa gestured toward his wrist. Ben extended his arm, allowing her to hold a specialized scanner near the Omnitrix. The holographic display projected a complex energy pattern, green waves intertwining with the purplish temporal signature of the anomaly. It's establishing resonance, she observed with fascination. Not amplifying the effect, but harmonizing with it. Like it's learning the temporal frequency. Adaptive programming, Ben confirmed. The Omnitrix is designed to catalog and incorporate new genetic information. It must be treating the temporal distortion as a new form of energy to understand. Their analysis was interrupted by a Bureau agent approaching with urgent purpose. Mizuchi-san, we're detecting another anomaly forming 2 kilometers east. Different signature, spatial rather than temporal. Keita immediately shifted to crisis management mode. Containment team, en route, but thin-stretched, the agent reported. Multiple anomalies emerging across the district. Pattern, she demanded. Circular, the agent confirmed. Displaying a map on his tablet. Forming a perimeter around this position. The tactical implications were immediately clear to both Ben and Keita. Whatever was causing the dimensional thinning, it was no longer manifesting randomly, it was creating a deliberate pattern. We need to investigate the secondary site, Keita decided. Tennyson-san, your expertise may be required if the situation escalates. Ben nodded, the familiar weight of responsibility settling comfortably on his shoulders. Crisis response had been his life since finding the Omnitrix, different dimension. Same fundamental duty to protect. I'll continue monitoring the temporal anomaly, Melissa offered. The stabilization pattern may provide insights applicable to the new manifestations. Appreciated, Keita acknowledged with professional respect. Bureau transport will return you to UA when containment is confirmed. As Ben prepared to depart with Keita, Melissa caught his arm. Be careful, she said with genuine concern. Interdimensional physics is unpredictable even in controlled conditions. Multiple spontaneous anomalies suggest increasing instability in the dimensional barrier. Careful is my middle name, Ben assured her with a confidence born of countless similar situations. Melissa's expression turned skeptical. Really? Because most dimensional travelers I meet tend to have middle names like Reckless, or just Wing It. The observation, delivered with gentle teasing rather than criticism, drew an appreciative laugh from Ben. Okay, you got me. But I've been handling universe-threatening crises since I was 10. This is practically routine. There's nothing routine about you, Ben Tennyson, Melissa replied with a smile that carried both scientific assessment and personal warmth. Which is precisely why your data is so valuable. The simple statement, blending professional recognition with personal connection, created an unexpected moment between them, an acknowledgement that transcended their technical collaboration. Ben found himself returning her smile with genuine appreciation for both her expertise and her straightforward manner. I'll check in once we've assessed the new anomaly, he promised. As he departed with Kada, Ben was struck by how quickly he'd developed a rapport with Melissa. Her blend of brilliant technical DGE and unpretentious directness created a familiar comfort, perhaps because it reminded him of the best qualities of friends back home, or perhaps because she treated him as both a research subject and a person in equal measure. The second anomaly proved more visually dramatic than the temporal distortion. A rippling tear in reality approximately 2 meters long hung suspended in midair, edges fluctuating with prismatic energy. Unlike the dome-shaped temporal effect, this manifestation resembled a vertical slash in the fabric of space itself, a window briefly opening between dimensions. Spatial rupture, Kada identified immediately, consistent with theoretical models of interdimensional barriers failing. Bureau agents had established a perimeter, evacuating civilians from the Suro NDING block while specialized equipment monitored the anomaly's energy output. Unlike the temporal distortion, this rift was unstable, expanding and contracting in irregular pulses. This matches what I experienced during transition, Ben observed, studying the familiar energy patterns. The portal Eon created had similar characteristics before I passed through. The Omnitrix was reacting more strongly to this anomaly, the hourglass symbol pulsing in sync with the rift's fluctuations. Ben felt the device warming slightly against his skin, not the heat of malfunction, but the familiar sensation of active scanning. It's definitely responding to the spatial distortion, he reported to Kada. More intensely than with the temporal anomaly. Before she could reply, the rift pulsed dramatically, expanding to nearly twice its previous size. Through the opening, Ben caught a fleeting glimpse of another world, not his Earth, but a landscape of twisted metal structures beneath a green-tinged sky. Dimension view confirmed, a bureau technician called, recording frantically. Non-Earth environment visible through aperture. Not my dimension, Ben clarified quickly. I don't recognize that landscape. The revelation brought a new concern to Kata's expression. Multiple dimensions affected. That suggests a broader collapse of dimensional boundaries rather than a localized connection between our worlds. As if responding to their discussion, the rift fluctuated again, this time ejecting a small object that clattered to the ground before the opening collapsed back to its original size. A bureau agent in specialized protective gear cautiously approached, using equipment to secure the item in a containment field. Object retrieved, the agent reported. Appears technological in nature. Unknown composition. From their position at the monitoring station, Ben could see the device clearly, a metallic cube approximately 10 centimeters on each side, covered in circuit-like patterns that pulsed with internal energy. The design was unmistakable. Galvan technology, he identified immediately. That's from Azimuth's species, the creator of the Omnitrix. This revelation accelerated the situation's urgency. Kada immediately ordered enhanced containment protocols, while Ben studied the object with growing concern. The coincidence seemed too precise to be random, a piece of technology from the Omnitrix creator's species emerging through a dimensional rift in close proximity to Ben's location. It could be random dimensional debris, Ben acknowledged, but the timing and location suggest otherwise. This feels deliberate, meaning, Kada prompted, her tone suggesting she'd already reached a similar conclusion. Someone might be attempting to establish contact, Ben theorized, or tracking my dimensional signature through the Omnitrix. The containment team had secured the Galvan device in a specialized field that isolated it from both physical contact and energy emissions. Even so, Ben noted the cube's pulsing patterns were synchronizing with the Omnitrix's rhythm, a clear indication of designed interaction. We should contact Melissa, Ben suggested. If T-HAT device is attempting to establish communication with the Omnitrix, her monitoring equipment might be able to decode the signal patterns. Kada nodded once, already activating her communication device. Within minutes, arrangements had been made to transport both the anomaly data and the Galvan device to a secure bureau facility where Melissa and Professor Shield could examine it under controlled conditions. As containment operations continued around them, Ben found a moment to voice the question that had been forming since the object's appearance. The Bureau seems exceptionally well prepared for dimensional anomalies. Almost as if you've encountered similar situations before. Kata's amber eyes met his directly, her professional composure momentarily yielding to what might have been resignation. We have, though not at this scale or frequency. When were you planning to share that information? Ben asked, keeping his tone neutral rather than accusatory. When authorized, she replied simply. Which, given today's developments, will likely be soon. Director Tanaka is consulting with government authorities regarding classification protocols. The candid response, while not providing specific details, acknowledged the information asymmetry Ben had suspected. Rather than frustration, he felt a certain respect for Kata's position, balancing professional obligations agi. NST practical necessities in an escalating situation. I understand operational security, he assured her. But if these anomalies relate to my presence here, full context might help me avoid making things worse. Something in his reasonable approach seemed to resonate with Kata. After a moment's consideration, she spoke quietly, ensuring their conversation remained private amid the Bureau activities surrounding them. Japan has experienced 3 previous confirmed incidents of dimensional boundary fluctuations in the past decade, she revealed. Small scale, temporary, and successfully contained without public knowledge. Each involved brief contact with alternate realities, though none resulted in physical transfer of living organisms. Until me, Ben concluded. Until you, she confirmed. Your arrival represents an unprecedented escalation, not only a complete biological transfer across dimensional boundaries but sustained presence afterward. Most dimensional contacts are momentary, the barriers rapidly resealing. And yet I've been here for days with no sign of being pulled back, Ben observed. That suggests something fundamentally different about this situation. Precisely why the SHIELD Foundation was consulted, Kata explained. Their expertise in energy manipulation and quirk enhancement technology offers perspectives our standard protocols lack. Further discussion was interrupted as the rift pulsed dramatically, expanding nearly a meter before contracting again. The pattern of fluctuations was increasing in both frequency and magnitude, a concerning development that immediately refocused their attention. Destabilizing, a technician reported urgently. Energy readings spiking across all measured frequencies. Evacuation perimeter, Kata demanded. Established at 200 meters and holding, came the prompt response. All civilians cleared. Ben studied the rift's behavior with growing concern. The pattern resembled the final stages of a dimensional portal collapsing catastrophically, something he'd witnessed during previous interdimensional incidents. Such collapses typically released substantial energy in unpredictable ways. It's going to implode, he warned Kata. When dimensional apertures destabilize like this, they usually release a substantial energy wave during final collapse. She immediately grasped the tactical implications. Containment field might not hold against interdimensional energy, Ben cautioned. But I have an alien that could absorb the discharge. Kata assessed the situation with remarkable calm given the escalating crisis. Authorized. Proceed with containment measures. Ben activated the Omnitrix, cycling through available transformations until finding the appropriate form for energy absorption. The device responded with unusual readiness, almost as if anticipating his selection. Feedback. The transformation enveloped him in familiar green light, replacing his human form with a tall, slender alien composed of black skin with green circuit-like patterns. Long antennae extended from his head, while plug-like appendages replaced his fingers and a long tail extended behind him. Conductoid DNA activated. Ben announced in feedback's distinctive electronic voice. I can absorb and redirect energy discharges. Bureau agents stared in momentary surprise before Kata's calm commands refocused them. Maintain perimeter. Tennyson-san will attempt energy containment when the rift collapses. Ben approached the fluctuating tear in reality, feeling the dimensional energy radiating from it in waves that resonated with his conductoid form. Feedback was perfectly suited for this task, capable of absorbing massive energy discharges that would overwhelm most containment systems. Stand clear, he instructed the nearest agents. When it goes, the initial surge will be directional before I can contain it. The rift's pulsations increased in both frequency and intensity, clear warning signs of imminent collapse. Ben positioned himself strategically, antennae and fingertips extended toward the dimensional tear, ready to channel the energy release. When it came, the collapse was both violent and beautiful. The rift contracted suddenly to a pinpoint of blinding light before releasing a prismatic energy wave that rippled outward with concussive force. Ben's feedback form absorbed the brunt of the discharge, his body glowing with accumulated power as the dimensional energy flowed into him rather than dispersing destructively. Energy contained, he reported, his voice distorted by the massive power now coursing through his system. Need to discharge safely. Keita immediately grasped the situation. Upward release. Atmospheric discharge only. Ben nodded, pointing his antennae and plug-tipped fingers skyward. With careful control, he released the accumulated dimensional energy in a spectacular beam that shot hundreds of meters into the air, dissipating harmlessly in the upper atmosphere in a display that resembled Technicolor lightning. As the final energy discharged from his system, Ben surveyed the area. The dimensional rift had completely collapsed, leaving only specialized equipment readings to confirm it had ever existed. The Bureau agents were already moving with practiced efficiency, collecting data and dismantling the temporary containment structures. Situation contained, Keita confirmed, reviewing reports from field agents. No casualties or property damage beyond the initial evacuation zone. Ben transformed back to human form, the Omnitrix timing out with its characteristic red flash. That went better than expected. Usually, dimensional collapses are messier. Your intervention was timely and effective, Keita acknowledged, the simple statement carrying professional respect beneath her typically reserved demeanor. The conductoid form's energy manipulation capabilities proved ideal for the situation. Coming from Keita, the straightforward assessment felt like high praise. Ben had noticed she wasn't given to unnecessary compliments or exaggeration, her communication always precise and measured. All part of the interdimensional hero service. Ben replied with a slight smile, masking the residual tension of crisis response with humor, a habit developed through years of high-stakes situations. As cleanup operations continued, Ben's attention returned to the Galvan device that had emerged before the rift's collapse. The metallic cube had been secured in a specialized containment unit, its pulsing patterns dormant following the dimensional aperture's closure. That device is our best lead, he noted to Keita. If it is Galvan technology, it might contain information about what's happening to the dimensional barriers. It will be transported to the secure research facility immediately, she confirmed. Professor Shield and Melissa San will be granted access under Bureau supervision. The mention of Melissa brought a realization to Ben. She's still at the temporal anomaly site. We should update her on these developments. Keita nodded, already activating her communication device. The brief exchange confirmed that Melissa was safe and the temporal anomaly had stabilized into a self-contained bubble that was no longer expanding. Bureau technicians were maintaining the perimeter while developing a gradual deceleration protocol to safely normalize the affected area. She'll meet us at the research facility, Keita reported after concluding the call. Transport is arranging collection now. As they prepared to depart, Ben cast a final glance at where the dimensional rift had been, empty air now giving no indication of the reality tear that had briefly connected worlds. The increasing frequency and intensity of anomalies suggested whatever was causing the dimensional thinning was accelerating, not stabilizing. How long until the next one? He asked quietly, the question rhetorical yet heavy with implication. Keita understood the underlying concern. The interval between detected anomalies has decreased by approximately 27% with each occurrence. If the pattern holds, we don't have much time to figure this out, Ben concluded. The Bureau's secure research facility was housed beneath an unassuming government building in central Musudafu. Multiple security checkpoints, quirk suppression fields, and biometric scanners protected a state-of-the-art laboratory complex that rivaled the most advanced plumber bases Ben had visited. Professor Shielda and Melissa were already present when Ben and Keita arrived, having been escorted directly from the temporal anomaly site. They stood before a specialized containment field housing the Galvan device, deep in technical discussion about its potential functions. Melissa greeted with evident relief when she spotted them. The reports said you contained a dimensional energy discharge. Are you all right? The genuine concern in her voice caught Ben slightly off guard. Most scientists he'd worked with focused primarily on the phenomena rather than his well-being after such incidents. I'm fine, he assured her. Feedback can handle pretty much any energy type thrown at him. Dimensional discharge is just another day at the office. Your nonchalance about potentially reality-altering events is both concerning and impressive. Melissa observed with a slight shake of her head. The conductoid form's energy absorption capabilities must be extraordinary to contain a collapsing dimensional aperture. One of my more useful transformations, Ben acknowledged. Though I'm more interested in that. He nodded toward the contained Galvan device. Any progress identifying its function? Definitely communication technology, Professor Shield confirmed, turning back to the containment field. The energy signature matches transmission patterns, though the specific protocol is unlike anything in our database. It's synchronized with the Omnitrix briefly before going dormant, Melissa added. Almost like a handshake protocol that didn't complete. Ben approached the containment field, studying the familiar Galvan design patterns. It's definitely from Azimuth's species. The circuit patterns match Galvan aesthetic and functional design, efficiency prioritized over everything else. The creator of your Omnitrix? Professor Shield questioned. And probably the smartest being in 5 galaxies, at least in my dimension, Ben confirmed. If this is his technology, it might be an attempt to locate me across dimensional boundaries. A tracking beacon, Kata suggested, immediately alert to security implications. Or a communication attempt, Ben countered. Azimuth would have detected the Omnitrix's dimensional displacement. He might be trying to establish contact. Melissa studied the device with renewed interest. If it's a communication module designed to interface with the Omnitrix, our containment field might be preventing the connection. The isolation barriers block all external energy signatures, which is standard protocol for unknown interdimensional objects, Kata noted, though her tone suggested she was considering alternatives rather than dismissing the possibility. After a moment's consideration, she turned to the bureau technicians. Prepare modified containment protocols. Level 3 isolation with monitored energy corridor specific to the Omnitrix signature. The precise instructions impressed Ben, balancing security concerns with practical investigation needs. Within minutes, the technicians had reconfigured the containment field to maintain physical isolation while allowing limited energy transmission aligned with the Omnitrix's specific frequency. Approach the field, Kata instructed Ben. Maintain physical distance but allow proximity for potential communication. Ben positioned himself near the containment barrier, extending his Omnitrix arm toward the Galvan device without breaching the security field. Almost immediately, the metallic cube reactivated, circuit patterns illuminating in sequence as it detected the Omnitrix's proximity. It's responding, Melissa observed, monitoring energy readings. Definite recognition pattern. The cube's surface reconfigured, segments shifting to reveal what appeared to be a transmission module. A small beam of green light projected from the device, scanning the Omnitrix for several seconds before retracting. The cube then began emitting a series of pulsed light patterns, clearly a coded communication attempt. It's requesting authentication, Ben realized, recognizing the sequence from previous Omnitrix updates. Standard Galvan security protocol, can you respond? Professor Shield asked. Ben nodded, activating the Omnitrix interface. Unlike its usual holographic display, the device produced a specific pattern of light pulses that matched and complemented the cube's transmission. The synchronized communication continued for several seconds before the cube's entire surface reconfigured again. A small holographic projection emerged, initially distorted and flickering before stabilizing into a recognizable image. A diminutive gray-skinned figure with large eyes and a hunched posture appeared, unmistakably a Galvan, though not Azimuth himself. Omnitrix signal confirmed, the hologram stated in a slightly metallic voice. Identity verification. Benjamin Kirby Tennyson. Dimensional displacement detected. Initiating recovery protocols. Recovery protocols. Ben repeated, hope rising unexpectedly. You can bring me back to my dimension. The hologram flickered, suggesting limited two-way communication capability. Dimensional coordinates logged. Barry. R integrity compromised across multiple vectors. Stabilization required before extraction attempt. Who sent you? Ben asked, suspecting but needing confirmation. Was it Azimuth? Transmission degrading, the hologram reported. Image becoming increasingly unstable. Dimensional interference exceeding compensation parameters. Primary directive. Omnitrix must synchronize with local dimensional frequency to prevent cascading failure. Cascading failure, Melissa repeated with evident concern. As the dimensional thinning reaching critical levels, the hologram addressed her question despite not being directed to it. Affirmative. Barrier collapse accelerating. Multiple dimensional boundaries affected. Convergence event probable without intervention. The implications sent a chill through the room. What had seemed a localized phenomenon affecting Ben's home dimension, and this one was apparently more widespread, a multidimensional crisis threatening broader reality. How do I stabilize the barriers? Ben asked urgently as the hologram continued deteriorating. Omnitrix. Calibration. Focal point. The transmission became increasingly fragmented. Island coordinates transmitted. Shield technology compatible. Synchronization required. With those final broken phrases, the holographic projection collapsed. The Galvan device pulsed once more before its circuits dimmed to dormancy. Internal power apparently exhausted by the interdimensional communication attempt. Silence fell over the laboratory as the implications settled upon everyone present. Professor Shield was the first to speak, his scientific mind already processing the fragmented information. It mentioned shield technology being compatible, he noted thoughtfully. And island coordinates. Island, Melissa concluded immediately. It must be referring to our research facility. The floating island's positioning systems allow it to maintain exact geographical coordinates despite constant movement. And it houses the world's most advanced energy manipulation technology, Professor Shield added, his expression growing determined. If the Omnitrix needs to synchronize with this dimension's frequency to stabilize the barriers. Quote, Island would provide the ideal technological infrastructure, Melissa finished her father's thought. Our quantum harmonic resonators were designed to stabilize quark energy fluctuations across wide areas. With modification, they might serve as dimensional stabilizers. Keita was already activating her communication device. Director Tanaka needs this information immediately. If a cascading failure of dimensional barriers is imminent, Bureau protocols require coordinated response across all agencies. As the scientists and Bureau personnel mobilized around this new information, Ben found himself processing the personal implications. The Galvan message confirmed what he'd hoped. His dimension was aware of his displacement and working toward recovery. However, the cascading failure warning suggested the situation was far more serious than a single hero stranded in the wrong universe. The Island Expo begins in 3 days, Professor Shield noted, checking his tablet. The island will be at its predetermined coordinates in international waters. If we're interpreting the message correctly, that's our window for attempting dimensional stabilization. The expo also means thousands of civilians and hundreds of international guests on the island, Keita pointed out. If the stabilization attempt fails, those people could be endangered, Ben completed the thought, the familiar weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. But if we do nothing, this cascading failure might threaten entire dimensions. Melissa approached him, her expression blending scientific determination with personal concern. The message confirmed you're not causing the dimensional thinning, you're potentially the solution to it. The Omnitrix, Ix's adaptive capabilities might be exactly what's needed to stabilize the barriers. Assuming we can figure out how to properly synchronize it with your dimension's frequency, Ben added. Without causing more damage in the process. That's where I come in, she replied with quiet confidence. Support item engineering is exactly about bridging the gap between natural abilities and controlled application. If the Omnitrix needs to harmonize with our dimensional frequency, I can design the interface technology. Her certainty was reassuring, not the overconfidence of inexperience, but the grounded assurance of someone who knew precisely what her skills could accomplish. Ben found himself trusting her assessment despite the enormous stakes involved. We'll need authorization for emergency access to Island during the expo. Professor Shield stated, already drafting communications on his tablet. The Shield Foundation can arrange credentials, but Bureau cooperation would expedite matters. Consider it done, Keita confirmed. Director Tanaka will coordinate with international authorities. Given the potential threat level, I anticipate full cooperation. As planning continued around them, Melissa moved closer to Ben. Speaking quietly, are you okay? Finding out your home dimension is trying to reach you, but with all these complications. The simple question, focused on His personal experience rather than just the scientific implications caught Ben by surprise. Most people he encountered during crises focused exclusively on the technical or heroic aspects of his situation, forgetting there was a person behind the Omnitrix. It's a relief, actually, he admitted. Knowing they're looking for me, that Azimuth is working on the problem. But also knowing this isn't just about getting me home anymore. There are bigger consequences for both our dimensions. Multiple dimensions, apparently, Melissa corrected gently. But that's not new for you, is it? Carrying responsibility for more than just yourself. The insightful observation suggested she understood more about him than their brief acquaintance would normally allow. Comes with the Omnitrix, Ben acknowledged. Sometimes I think that's why Azimuth chose me in the first place. Not because I was special, but because I was willing to carry the weight. That willingness itself is special, Melissa replied simply. Especially in someone who was only 10 when it started. Something in her perspective, seeing the burden beneath the heroics, created an unexpected connection between them. Most people envied the Omnitrix's power or focused solely on its practical applications. Few considered what it meant to carry such responsibility from childhood. Their moment of understanding was interrupted as Keita approached. Her conversation with Director Tanaka concluded. We have authorization for immediate preparation and deployment to I-Island. A Bureau security team will accompany us to coordinate with local authorities. Us? Ben questioned. You, myself, Professor Shield, and Melissa San, Keita confirmed. As primary stakeholders in the dimensional stabilization effort, we depart tomorrow morning to allow time for equipment preparation and security integration before the expo begins. The accelerated timeline brought the situation's urgency into sharp focus. What had begun as Ben's personal dimensional displacement had evolved into a potential multiversal crisis requiring coordinated response across scientific and security agencies. I should inform UA of the situation, Ben realized. I have that welcome party tonight, and classes tomorrow. Already addressed, Keita assured him. Principal Nezu has been briefed and approves your participation in this operation as priority training. Official documentation will classify this as a specialized internship with the SHIELD Foundation. Always with the paperwork, Ben commented with a half smile, the familiar complaint. Masking the tension of their situation. My dimension could be collapsing, and there's still forms to fill out. Melissa laughed despite the circumstances. If bureaucracy survives interdimensional crisis, it might be the most resilient force in the universe. The unexpected humor broke the tension that had been building since the Galvan message, creating a moment of shared lightness amid serious preparations. Even Keita's expression softened fractionally, suggesting she wasn't immune to the relief good humor provided during crisis response. As their planning session concluded, arrangements were made for transportation back to UA. Professor Shield would return to I-Island immediately to prepare the necessary equipment, while Melissa would accompany Ben and Keita to collect essential materials from UA before departure the following morning. I'll need to design portable monitoring equipment specifically calibrated to the Omnitrix's energy signature, Melissa explained as they traveled. Something that can interface with I-Island's systems while maintaining precise readings of the dimensional resonance patterns. Sounds like you'll be busy tonight, Ben observed. Actually, she replied thoughtfully. Having you present during the design process would be invaluable. The Omnitrix's response to different calibration attempts could guide the development. Technical support sleepover, Ben suggested with light humor. More like late-night engineering session in UA's support department, Melissa corrected, though her smile suggested she appreciated the joke. If you're willing to assist, of course. Happy to help, Ben agreed readily. Though I should at least make an appearance at the welcome party my classmates arranged. Dimensional crisis or not, it would be rude to skip out entirely. Of course, Melissa nodded understanding. Personal connections are important, especially when facing uncertain situations. I can begin preliminary designs and meet you afterward. Keita, who had been monitoring Bureau communications during their conversation, rejoined them with an update. Both anomaly sites are now fully contained. No additional manifestations detected in the past hour. Though sensor arrays remain at heightened alert status. A temporary lull, Ben suggested, or response to the Galvan device making contact. Unknown, Keita acknowledged. Huff historical patterns suggest dimensional phenomena often demonstrate cyclical intensity. We may have a brief window of relative stability before the next acceleration. Which means tonight is crucial for preparation. Melissa concluded. If we're interpreting the Galvin message correctly, we have limited time before the cascading failure reaches critical stages. The gravity of their situation settled over the vehicle as they continued toward Ua. Ben found himself in the familiar position of balancing immediate crisis response with personal connections, the perpetual challenge of being both a normal teenager and the wielder of the Omnitrix. You should attend your welcome gathering, Kata stated unexpectedly, surprising both Ben and Melissa. Maintaining normalcy during exceptio null circumstances provides psychological anchoring. I'll arrange for Melissa San to access Development Studio B for preliminary work until you can join her. The practical consideration for his personal well-being, coming from the typically protocol-focused agent, represented another small shift in their professional relationship. Ben was beginning to recognize that beneath Kata's reserved IOR was someone who understood the human elements of crisis management as well as the procedural requirements. Thanks, he replied simply. I won't stay long, just enough to show appreciation for their effort. As they arrived at UA's imposing gates, the contrast between the school's peaceful campus and the dimensional crisis they were preparing to address couldn't have been more striking. Stewed, NTS moved between buildings with normal concerns and conversations, unaware that reality itself was potentially unraveling around them. I'll escort Melissa San to Development Studio B and arrange necessary access protocols. Kata informed Ben as they parted at the main entrance. Join us when you can. I'll start designing the interface components immediately, Melissa added. Having actual readings from the Omnitrix will help refine the calibration parameters. Ben nodded appreciation to both women, each contributing specialized expertise to address his dimensional displacement. I'll be there soon, just need to make a brief appearance and explain my sudden internship to everyone. As they separated, Ben headed toward the 1A dormitory with mixed emotions. The confirmation that Hi's home dimension was aware of his displacement and working toward recovery should have been unreservedly positive. Instead, it came weighted with knowledge of a broader crisis that transformed his personal situation into something far more consequential. The end. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.